And a pleasant good afternoon to everyone out there in Irish Breakdown land. I am Vince D'Addario. I am the football analyst here at irishbreakdown.com. And with me, as always, is Brian Driscoll. He is the publisher at irishbreakdown.com. And it is a Friday free-for-all mailbag. Brian, best day of the week. And I'm ready to rock and roll. How about you?
Yeah, you only got an hour, so we need to dive right into this thing and get going.
That's right. Yes, I only have an hour now that I'm back in school. As you can see from my background, it's going to be kind of a Where's Waldo for me for a few days to see kind of where I can find my spot. But today, here we are in the athletic director's conference room. So moving into our first couple of questions, we've got everybody. Michael, happy Friday. Brian and Vince. Tommy Guns with his daily IB Nation shout out, which is awesome. OC Irish fan. Vince, other than coaching baseball, what classes do you teach? You must have a very understanding principal. Go Irish. So I am a PE teacher here at Riley High School, and so I teach PE all day long. So this is my period off. That's also with my lunch. So that's why I can give everybody an hour of my time during the day. But I teach PE, which is right down the hallway in the main gym. So that is what I do during the day. And I have one of the best principals I've ever had in my almost 2 decades of teaching. My principal is unbelievable. So he's fantastic and lets me do what I need to do, which I really appreciate. And it doesn't hurt that his son is also a baseball player. So I appreciate that as well. But all right, let's see here. Brian, what would your expectations for Notre Dame this year if Djokovic was starting at quarterback? Many of us would have inserted Djokovic at halftime of that UM disaster in 2019, and he may have won the job. So I think Brian is having some technical difficulties, so I will push forward on this one until he comes back. Hey, Brian, what's up, man?
Just trying to get this connection figured out. So am I still not clear? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but you're breaking up a little bit. All right. But I don't know if you want to try to answer this question or you want me to go ahead and jump in.
I mean, you can give your opinion too. I'll share mine afterwards.
I was absolutely planning on it. So if Djokovic was starting this year, number one, I don't think Cohn is in a Notre Dame uniform, number one, because Phil Djokovic would have been a returning starter. So I don't think we would be having a quarterback debate right now. I would be very excited for what Notre Dame could be if Phil Djokovic was the quarterback at Notre Dame right now. I think that Irish Nation would be very happy as well because they would have seen what he could do at a full year of starting last year potentially. And he'd be coming back for what would have been his last year at Notre Dame this year, correct?
No, he'd still have another year left.
He'd still have another year left?
Yeah, okay. He was a red shirt.
Okay.
Plus the COVID year. Either way, he would have got a year back.
Good point. Yes. So, I would have been very happy. That a lot of weapons around him, obviously. I think my expectations as far as like a win-loss record would be very similar to what they are currently. I just think it would look different. And that's kind of where I'm at with the Djokovic discussion.
I mean, look, I know some people don't like this, but whatever. It was asked. I think it's a good question. I think it's a very fair question.
I think so,
look,
too.
The guy's getting first-round NFL draft pick, conversation from people after 1 year at Boston College.
Right.
Because if he was still at Notre Dame, let's just say hypothetically that Notre Dame would have put Phil Djokovic in the game after Michigan in 2019, right? Whether it's as a full-time deal or whether it's just to get him some experience, get him some opportunities, he'd have had that experience. He'd have had an offseason that would have been a little messed up like the one he had, but it would have still been a system that he already knew, players he already knew. It wouldn't have been as problematic. I think he would have gone into last year. I think he would have been very good last year against a pretty weak schedule. I think he would have put up good numbers. I think Notre Dame would have won every single game that they won last year. I mean, let's not forget Phil Djokovic almost beat Clemson at Clemson with the roster at Boston College. You know what I mean? So I'm certainly confident he could have been successful at Notre Dame with the team he had around him at Notre Dame.
Yes.
And then he'd be coming into this year as basically a 2.5-year starter with players he'd been with for 4. I mean, look, he came in the same class with Kevin Austin, Braden Lindsey, all those guys that he was teammates with them for 4 years. They spent
right.
We've talked about a lot in this show about how Kevin Austin has just dominated in practice at times. Well, the guy usually throwing him the ball in those instances was Phil Dracovic. I mean, we saw some springs. This Phil's last spring, well, actually, I think his only spring at Notre Dame, where, I mean, him and Kevin Austin were just putting on clinics some days.
Yep.
Just with the deep ball.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think Notre Dame would be a team that I would say they'd have a shot to win the national championship this year. You know, I'd say, you know, you said your record wouldn't change. I'd be more confident that this is a playoff team. I think this can still be a playoff team, but when you have a quarterback that can just put a team on his shoulders and carry him in ways that, as much as I love Jack Cohn, he's just not going to be able to do, then, yeah, I think this team could beat anybody, especially when you go into a year where Notre Dame would have a 2.5-year starter quarterback against Alabama, who has a new quarterback, Ohio State, who has a new quarterback, Clemson, who has a new quarterback. You know, all those type of things. I'd feel really, really, really good about it. And there's going to be Notre Dame fans who are going to hate on him. Like, we got a comment about, oh, there's no pressure at BC. Actually, there's a ton of pressure on him at BC because he's still Phil Dracovic. So I've made this comment, and I believe it. There's one group of fans in the entire country that don't think Phil Dracovic's really good, and that's Notre Dame fans. Now, not all of them, but there's
not all of them
that have just bought into the lie that he wasn't as good as advertised, or he was, because they just can't accept the fact that maybe Brian Kelly made a mistake. I mean, God forbid that we admit that, right? It's okay to say that, right? We can all say that, right? Like, maybe we can say Urban Meyer maybe made a mistake by not starting Joe Burrow instead of Dwayne Haskins. I mean, it's okay to admit that great coaches make mistakes. It happens. But there's only one group of people in the world that don't think he's really good, and it's that group of Notre Dame fans who just stubbornly will not accept the fact that he is really, really freaking good.
Yeah, absolutely agree. OC Irish fan says, I believe Hero Canoe had a game last night here in SoCal. Any update or news, reports, etc.?
No.
We don't usually get game by game blows of recruits. I mean, I don't want to speak
a game. I was
you.
a little busy last night trying to transcribe all the interviews from yesterday and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I don't know.
I'm sure he was good.
When his film comes up, I'll have a chance to look at it. But no, I think it's, you know, to his point, I don't really care to do the game by game updates, but I am interested to see what kind of jump Hero makes as a senior, because he's still kind of new to this whole football thing, especially American football.
That's true.
And I'm really curious to see what kind of progress he can make technically and conditioning wise and all those type of things, because he's already considered a pretty top prospect. And I want to see what he does this year. I'm really curious to see what he does this year.
Absolutely. Do you want? I don't know if you're looking at these over here. Do you want me to jump into some of the?
Look, this is Friday Mailbag.
Okay,
if that's what the people want to talk about, then that's what the people want to talk about.
Sounds good, man. Nolan says, I think we've all realized the Dracovic thing was something personal. The guy has proven them wrong on everything related to his on-field ability. The most unfortunate part of it for me is that Dracovic seemed like a great guy that absolutely loved Notre Dame. And then follows it up with the coaching staff has to be better than that in the future if they ever want to sniff a title.
I agree with a lot of that. I think for me, I don't think it was personal against Phil as much as it was personal towards Ian. There was this blind faith towards Ian Book that Notre Dame had that just was, and there are some around the program that when, and it's not all, but the fact of the matter is every time a kid doesn't pan out, you get these character assassination reports behind the scenes, you know, talking to sources about how. So I remember when the stuff came out of it, because I was approached by one of those people saying, hey, he's not working hard, he's not doing this, which flew in the face of everything I'd ever heard from players about Phil Dracovic. I mean, I had somebody who said he met a team captain who they asked him, you know, hey, how are you guys going to be this year? And the team captain started talking about Phil Dracovic and how good he was and how hard he worked. And this was before 2019. So, you know, it just flew in the face of everything we heard. But then, of course, my problem with that is then that is the mantra that the people that just believe everything that comes out of Notre Dame, they just glob onto that. And it's, oh, he doesn't work hard. He's this, he's that, and the other thing. And that's just unfortunate because it's not true. And there's a reason that the teammates at Notre Dame loved Phil. There's only one teammate that ever made a negative comment about Phil, and that was the guy that everybody thought Phil should have started over. That's it. And even that was kind of an offhanded, you know, shot at Phil. But, you know, it's just an unfortunate thing. But I think it was more of a pro-Ian personal thing than it was an anti-Phil Dracovic personal thing, in my opinion. I don't think it was I don't like Phil, and I just think it was they wanted Ian. And part of it is because they want the structure. They wanted the structure that came with Ian at quarterback. Now, again, I know Ian Book could scramble and those kind of things, but with Phil Dracovic, you kind of got to throw the playbook out a little bit and just let him play.
Right.
And Brian Kelly likes to talk a lot about the structure of our offense, and he wants the running to come from the structure of the offense, where with Phil, sometimes you got to let him run around from left to right 4 times to launch a pass 40 yards downfield for completion. Right. You just have to accept that that's going to be part of what he does. You have to accept the fact that he's going to turn the ball over sometimes. That's what happens when you play that kind of game, just like Deshaun Watson played a real aggressive, confident game, and he turned the ball over 17 times, just picked through 17 interceptions the year that he did that one thing with Clemson, which was, oh, by the way, win a national championship. So I think it was more of that style of play, differences of opinion, pro-Ian than it was anti-Phil. I don't think there was I think the anti-Phil feeling from Kelly was more about anti-us in the media that we're pushing for Phil. I think that was more of what Kelly didn't like. He doesn't like it when other people try to tell him how he should run his program, which I'm fine with. I mean, I wouldn't either if I was in his shoes. I wouldn't want Brian Driscoll telling me what to do if I was in Brian Kelly's shoes. It doesn't mean that I'm wrong, but I wouldn't like it.
Right. Tommy Gunn says, Vince, what is your class theme? Right now, my class theme is to just make sure the 40 kids in my class are doing what they're supposed to do. There's no theme. Get in the gym, get changed, let's rock and roll. That's my theme. So continuity. Let's see here. Larry wants to know, does Cohn have 1 or 2 years of eligibility remaining?
My understanding is it's only 1. Now, I've had some debates with people, and there are other people claiming it's 2, but my understanding is only 1. Because he played 3 years at Wisconsin. Last year was supposed to be his 4th year. And so you can't combine a medical and a COVID in the same year. You can't get 2 years of eligibility out of 1.
Right.
And it is the way I see it. So, he's already played 3 years. He gets another one back. It's not like he had a medical redshirt in another year where he then could have he played more than 4 games in all 3 of his previous seasons. So I believe it's only 1, but I've had some people tell me that it's 2. I still haven't got an answer on that.
Christopher Sally says, any concern about the future depth at the Viper position? Any current or future players who are likely to change position to that spot?
Oh, yeah, I think there's some concerns about it. You've got Osida's got a foot injury. Will Schweitzer's got a shoulder injury. Isaiah Foskey's only got a couple years left. So, yeah, I think there's some concerns about it. I don't think it's necessarily incredibly concerning because it's a different defense now. Mm-hmm. And I think ultimately Marcus Freeman wants to do a lot more 3-down stuff, which means more big ends on the field. So, if you're going to a pure 3-down, you're going to have Tyson Ford. You can have 2 Tyson Fords on the field on opposite ends. You don't need just one guy. And so you could have, in the way Marcus Freeman, I think, wants to run his defense, you could use linebackers in that role at times. You can bring a Josh Burnham up off the edge and blitz him off the edges, play him in sort of a Viper role, even though he's a linebacker. So I think there are a lot of different things that you can do in that regards that you don't need that true Viper. But they are still recruiting that player. I think Aiden Cabrera can play that position. Obviously, Wexler can play that position. Jordan Patojo can play that position. But I just don't think there's the same need for a true Viper in the sense that we've seen under Clark Lee, a guy that can drop into coverage and those kind of things. I think you can put 2 big ends on the field as long as they can both rush the quarterback, and you're going to be fine in this defense. It's just it's a different, and it's going to take some getting used to for us, all of us. But also, we need to see it play out that way. Also, that's the other thing.
Tommy Gunn says, whoa, hey, we don't use the letters U and M together in the same word here. Going back to the reference to the rain game at UM. Yep, absolutely. Jojo says, good afternoon, Vince and Coach D. Happy Friday, guys, and the IB family. Vince, welcome to your favorite day of the week, and have a great weekend. That's the plan. Mm-hmm. Having a great weekend is always the plan.
And Tommy has another question too. Brian, did the deck get burnt? No, I won that battle. We are not burning the deck. Plus, we couldn't do it anyway. We'd have to wait a year to let the deck dry out first before we do that anyway. But I've won the battle for now, but I have a sneaky bad feeling that she's just letting me win the battle for now, since we can't do it anyway. And I'm gonna have to fight another couple rounds about that one.
I have a feeling you're right about that as well. Dropping Dime says Dracovic is a game-changing QB, and I would think we would go to a title this year. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Corey D. Hey, guys, keep up the exceptional work. In my opinion, this team has the ingredients to be Kelly's best and most talented team. Am I crazy?
No, you're not crazy, but I think you're feeling a little bit of that camp optimism. If it's something you're feeling, if it's just coming on now, it's the camp optimism. If it's something you've been feeling all summer, like Vince and I have kind of talked about this. I don't know if it has a chance to be his best team, talent-wise, but I think it's certainly close. I definitely think it has a chance to be their best team record-wise. And I definitely think this is a team that has an opportunity, Vince, to make a run. I really do. And it's because it's not just about them. Notre Dame's best team against Alabama's best team in the last 5-6 years, Notre Dame's probably not winning that game very often. But Notre Dame's best team is maybe an Alabama team that's not quite up to par, like the 2017 Alabama team, the 2019 Alabama team. Yeah, I think Notre Dame can win that one. And that's kind of how I feel about this team. I think this is a really good Notre Dame team. You made very clear yesterday, Vince. You pointed out that, look, speed is not going to be an issue with this Notre Dame team.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? As like it has in the past. This is a team that athletically can run with people. This is a team that's got talent on defense. This is a team that's you got those motion sensor lights.
Sure do. I'm like, turn on. Hold on.
So, yeah, I think this is certainly a team that has a chance to be really good and a chance to play with everybody if everything falls into place. And that's the one difference between Notre Dame and Ohio State and Alabama and Clemson. I still think the margin for error for Notre Dame is smaller than theirs. But I think the gap is closed enough where if Jack Cohn's as good as we think he can be, if the offensive line can just be good, not great, just good, and if the defense is going to be as good as we think it can be and they stay healthy, I think this team has a chance to be Kelly's best. And now we get to find out over the next couple months if that's true or not.
Yeah, we'll see. I think I need to see a little bit more before I'm ready to say that this is going to be Kelly's best team. I will say this is going to be, and you brought it up a little bit, this is going to be Kelly's fastest team. And I think this is going to be Kelly's most athletic team. Whether that translates into best, I think remains to be seen at this point. But like you said, speed's not going to be an issue.
You're taking the easy answer out. Don't be that guy. Don't be that guy, because you could say the same thing about every team in the country. We don't know how anybody's going to be 6 days in the fall camp.
Well,
come on, it's Friday free for all. Don't give me that softness. You're here for an hour. Come correct. Come on, Vince. Hey. I know what you really believe about this team and how much you say it.
I think this could be Kelly's
Don't
best
hold
team.
out on the people. Don't hold out on the people, Vince.
I do. I think this could be Kelly's best team. I'm out there. I'll be honest with you. I think this is the most well-rounded team I think that Kelly's had so far, and I'm excited about it. So I called Vince out on that one. I just want everybody to understand. I didn't force Vince into an answer he didn't believe. Vince and I are friends. Right? We talk a lot. And I know what he really believes about this team. And he was trying to give you the politically correct. Look, it's early. We're not coaches anymore, Vince. All right. We don't have to give the 6 days in the camp. And it'll be you can give your honest opinion. Vince and I, we're on the same page. The margin for error is thin, right? Yeah.
A guy goes down here, a guy goes down there,
yeah.
But it has a chance. It has a chance if things go correctly to be Kelly's best team.
Yeah.
And I know Vince believes that.
I do.
So I'm looking out for the people, Vince.
Yeah.
I'm looking out for the people.
I appreciate that. You always got to call me on my BS. You're right. You're right.
Because I know what you believe, and I know how badly you want to say it.
I do.
You just don't want to be wrong at the end, which I understand.
And I don't want people to be like, "Oh, he's just a homer," that kind of thing. Like I want to stay as far away from that as possible.
Do you know why, Vince? You know why people watch this show? Because they know that we're going to give honest assessments, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're not the homer side. We're not the negative side. I get it all the time. You and Vince, guys, you guys tell it like it is, right? And so that's what we're going to do. We're not,
Yeah.
and I would warn people, if Vince and I started talking about how good we think this team can be 6 days into camp, then the homer thing or the early season excitement thing that happens is starting to kick in. The reason I'm comfortable calling Vince out and getting him to admit what I know he believes is because we've been talking about this for 2 months.
Exactly.
We've been talking about this since before fall camp started. Because every year you get that fall camp starts, like, okay, you know what? This is the year. I know I've picked apart everything's about the team for the last 5 months, but camp started. This is the year, right? Happens all the time. But we've been saying this for a while, and that's the exciting thing for me. And a lot of it comes down to the fact that I truly believe that this offense is finally going to turn the corner. That's where a lot of the optimism comes from.
Sure. And look, I still have concerns. Don't get me wrong. There's still concerns that need to play out a little bit. But overall, and you're right, it hinges on what I think the offense is going to be. Because I have all the confidence in the world in the defense. And yeah, they've had some bumps and bruises and things of that nature and whatever. But I think they're deep, and I think they have excellent coaches across the board on the defensive side. I have no worries about the defense. I really don't. Concerns, we've talked about all those. But I finally think the offense has turned a corner in that they're going to play to their strengths. And I think this team can be very explosive. I do. I just watching those guys run around yesterday, and watching Tommy Rees control the offense in practice was very refreshing to me. Very refreshing. So, yeah, I'm very confident at this point.
You know what also is refreshing? It's what every coach needs. Great talent.
Yeah.
And look, as a coach, I had a receiving corps 1 year where I had 3 kids get named, somewhere in All-American. I had 2 kids from one receiving corps get NFL tryouts, right? They weren't all great before I got there. The reason they were great when I got there is because I think I was a good coach, but more importantly, I had really good tools to work with. Right? No coach takes a guy running a 5'2" at receiver and turns him into an All-American, right?
You're right.
You take guys with God-given ability, and it's your job to harness it and put it in the right direction. And that's my excitement with this, is because I think that the talent is there. It's like in a lot of years, Notre Dame's had the line, had the tight ends, had the quarterback, had the receivers, had the running backs to be a great offense. They've just never had all of those ingredients in 1 year. Right now, I'm still a little concerned about the offensive line, but I've never been as confident in the combination of quarterback, running back, tight end, receiver as I am with this group.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Absolutely.
Is the skill is there. Now it's like the offensive line has to not suck. I mean, that's literally it, because everybody's like, oh, the offensive line's not going to be as good as last year. The 2018 offensive line wasn't anywhere close to what it was last year. Notre Dame went 12-0 in 2018.
Exactly. Right.
And 2019 Notre Dame went 10-2, 11-2 if you count the bowl game, with a line that was even worse than the 2018 offensive line. The problem that year was quarterback play, at times running back play, and at times receiver play, other than the top 2, Komet and Claypool, was not where it needed to be. And the defense took a step back.
Right.
And that team still went 10-2 and was 40 yards away from a touchdown to beat Georgia. Right. And so that's where my optimism comes from. It's the skill on this team. And Vince talked about it yesterday, but see, that's where the margin for error comes. Because if you lose Kevin Austin, you lose Braden Lindsey, you can still be good, but will you be able to then still be competitive for a championship? That's a bigger question mark.
Right. Me. Absolutely. Absolutely. Colin C says, will there be a surprise show this week?
Might be one on Sunday. We'll see.
There you go. Let's see. Orange Glove Guy, how do you see this O-line inside of the 10? Can they power it in?
I think that still remains to be seen. But I actually think that's part of the offensive line that I think will be okay.
Right.
Because you'd have that right side of Patterson, Madden, Lugg, and the tight ends. And then on the other side, you got Zeke Correll, who we've seen kind of play before. He's a pretty good player. And then you have a big old Blake Fisher. So I think the one thing that they can do is in tight quarters really be physical. Yeah. I'm more concerned when you're out in the field and teams can run a lot more twists and slants and pressures and do more things like that. That's where I get a little bit more concerned about the offensive line than I am when it comes to tight quarters, mano a mano, me versus you. I'm less concerned about the offensive line because that's where Kane Madden, for example, will thrive.
You took the words right out of my mouth. Yep. I completely agree with that.
Great minds.
Yep. Yeah. Because look, he's a hoss. He's a hoss in the middle. I mean, and when he's drive blocking somebody, he's going to move them. I mean, I have no doubt in my mind, and I feel the same way about Josh Lugg, and I feel the same way about Patterson. So, I'm putting Mayer and whoever else on the right side, and I'm coming right at you. I mean, that's what I would do, inside the 10, because that's not a place where you're going to be pulling linemen to run outside. You're not going to run necessarily, a screen game where you need to get linemen out front. That's not what you're doing inside the 10. So, I think they'll be fine. We'll see who that running back is that's getting the ball inside the 10. I think that's going to be kind of a fun thing to keep an eye on. But yeah, I think they'll be okay inside the 10. Let's see. Skylar Hill. Awesome show, guys. Williams is crazy to watch. I look forward to watching him this year. Can he set a passing yards record at running back in the Kelly era? Very good question. Do you know off the top of your head, Brian, who he would be chasing at that point?
I'm thinking it's Armando. I'm looking that up now. Just give me a second.
Okay.
I thought Armando caught a lot of balls back in 2010. Armando Allen. Just give me a second.
Gotcha.
So Armando in 2010 caught not as many as I thought. Maybe that was 2009 that he did that. Okay, so it was so we're going to count running back just as guys that were actually playing running backs. We're not counting Theo Riddick in 2010 and 11.
That makes sense.
Because Armando finished his career really high, so a lot of his stats came during the Charlie era. So you have Theo Riddick caught 36 passes in 2012 for 370 yards. Kyron Williams this year had 35 for 313. That's the best running back mark. So yeah, I would say so. I mean, because you look at like Torian Folsom at 18, CJ Prosise had 26 for 308 in 2015. 2016, no. 2017, definitely not. See, Tony Jones never had like that kind of production at running back, even though he's a good – yeah. So, I mean, last year, Kyron had the second most catches and second most yards for a running back in the Brian Kelly era. So, yeah, I'd say he has a pretty good shot at getting to that point. No question.
Yeah,
no question.
Yeah. He's basically looking to beat himself. So,
yeah,
I think –
Now the question would be from a stat standpoint is, if obviously makes some bigger plays, then that's good. Like CJ Prosise, almost matched Kyron Williams in yards. He had 306 to Kyron's 313.
Yeah.
And CJ played fewer games because remember CJ got hurt that year. He only played 11 games, and then he only played like the first quarter of the Ohio State game and the first quarter of the Pitt game. So CJ played a lot fewer snaps than Kyron did that year, and had 26 catches, so 308 yards. So he was only 5 behind Kyron in fewer games. But he averaged almost 12 yards a catch. He had 26 catches, right? So more bigger plays. So the more bigger plays means you're going to have potentially fewer catches. And so I think that's something to obviously consider when you're looking at it is, is he going to be able to match the catches that he and Theo Riddick had? It just depends on if he's not making too many big plays. But I'd be a little surprised if he doesn't. The other thing to consider, too, is he's going to be splitting some of those catches also with Chris Tyree.
That's true.
And if teams are focusing more on Kyron, then you may see opportunities for Chris to make more plays because of how teams are game planning to stop Notre Dame. So that all those things factor into it. Just because one guy's maybe catching more doesn't mean he's a greater focal point or the staff likes him more, he's a better player. Sometimes it's just he's catching more because the defense isn't letting that guy catch the ball, and so this guy's going off.
Yeah.
And I think we could see some of that this year too, especially with Kyron, because if you're not thinking I got to stop 87 and 23 going into the early season games, then I just don't know what you're watching.
Right.
Unless you've just done a lot of high school film breakdowns again of Kevin Austin, which I don't think anyone's doing.
Right. Good point. Very good point. Okay. Let's see here. John Keevers, he says, how do you feel about our corners once they get beat at the line? So that's kind of a loaded question because, will Notre Dame be running, a lot of on an island coverages, cover one, man-to-man, things of that nature. Yeah, I think that they will be. If they get beat off the line, I don't care who you are. It doesn't really matter. Can they catch up? Yeah, look, I think Hart, I think he's got some speed. I think Clarence Lewis has some speed, things like that. But I think if they're consistently getting beat off the line, then they're not going to be running a lot of man-to-man. And I would be very worried if they were getting beat off the line, because if you're going up against college receivers and you get beat off the line, it's over. It doesn't matter. So do you have safeties? Is it a cover 2 situation where it's kind of a bump and run technique from the corner position, and then they're dropping into a zone in the flat, and then you've got safety help over the top? So are they actually getting beat, or are they just, punching and then letting them go kind of a thing? If they're getting beaten, it's one-on-one and the safeties are occupied with their guys, then that's a huge problem. And I don't know that any corner in the country, once you get beat off the line, if you've got bad technique, if you're leaning forward and you got bad technique and you get swum over or however the receiver's getting past you, it doesn't matter. It's game over. So I guess I'm not as worried about it, because I don't think that these guys are going to get beat as much. In practice yesterday, they were doing a lot of bump and run coverages, and I thought the corners handled themselves very, very well. They weren't getting beat off the line, and the wide receivers for Notre Dame are some of the better receivers that these corners are going to see all season. So if they can battle and they can be successful against Notre Dame's receivers, then I feel really, really good about what they look like moving forward against other competition. So, but that's a really good question, John. Really good question. John Klimek says, read the practice observations. Lug sounds like he will be solid. I'm starting to think the line could be solid. Want to see how Fisher does with pads on. Oh, believe me, no one was more disappointed to see Fisher walk to practice in shorts and a T-shirt. I was really looking forward, because we knew that they were going to scrimmage, or at the very least go 11 on 11, which is really what they did. I hesitate to call what they did a scrimmage, because it really wasn't much of a scrimmage. But it was 11 on 11. They had referees there. They were calling penalties, things like that. And I would have loved to see Blake Fisher go up against whoever that he was going up against. I think this line absolutely has the potential to be solid. Will they be more than solid this year? I think that remains to be seen. But I have a lot of faith in Patterson. I have a lot of faith in Josh Lugg. I have faith in Kane Madden if it's a run play and he's just double teaming with Patterson or with Lugg, and he doesn't have to necessarily get out in space. I like Zeke Correll. I do. I think he'll be very serviceable there at left guard. And again, Blake Fisher's a freshman, so I think there's going to be some growing pains there. But I think there's going to be growing pains for this entire line. And I wasn't expecting miracles in practice 6 from this offensive line. I think that they can be very good when they get time. I feel like give it another week or two and let's see where this line is at. But at the same time, I think you're going to have to give it a game or 2 or 3 before we really see who this line is. Now, am I saying that they're not going to be able to be successful against a Florida State or obviously a Toledo? No, I'm not saying that. I think that this line will be just fine against those 2 teams. I really do, especially since this line has to go up against the defensive line of Notre Dame. You've heard Brian and I say it a million times, John, that this defensive line could potentially be one of the best in the country. And even though they were missing a couple of pieces yesterday, they were still dominating the offensive line. But again, I've coached for a long time. Brian's coached for a long time. If the offensive line was dominating the defensive line in practice number 6, especially with 4 new starters on this line, I'd be very worried about what this defense is going to be doing. It just takes longer to gel. I tend to agree with you, John. I think this line could be very solid. I think they really could be. And I am very excited for next Thursday when we get another open practice. And hopefully Blake Fisher is out of concussion protocol at that point, and we'll be able to see what he has to offer. So looking forward to that. David Knight says, this is for both Vince and Brian. So as soon as Brian gets back, I will definitely ask him this question as well. But he says, this is for both of you since you both coach. When someone starts tanking, whether a corner, quarterback, or kicker, what do you tell them to attempt to get them back on the right track? Really good question, because obviously we're talking mental, not physical, and it really varies on the player. I've obviously dealt with a lot of quarterbacks in my time, being on the offensive side of the ball. But any player that's struggling, and you know that it's not a physical struggle, you have to really kind of know the player individually to kind of figure out how to pull them out of it. Some guys really respond to being yelled at. And I don't mean like in a degrading way, but they respond to raised voice. There's other guys that you want to pull off to the side, and you put your hands on their shoulder pads, and you're just kind of right here with them, and you put their head, and hey man, you're fine. Just go out there and do what you do. Relax, take a breath. You're fine. That's a lot more with like kickers, and quarterbacks. With quarterbacks, what I would tell quarterbacks is you go back to your fundamentals. Hey, go through your reads, relax. Trust your offensive line, because a lot of times when quarterbacks get the yips, it's because they're worried about the rush, or they're worried about their receivers not doing their job or whatever. You just got to remind them, hey, everybody's going to do their job. You got to do your job, and you got to lead. Go through your progression. So I guess I just break it down. Now that I'm hearing myself talk about it, I kind of break it down into just smaller pieces. Hey, do this, then you can do this, right? Don't look at it as just everything coming at you all at once. You break it down, get this done first, then you get this done, etc. And I will say, for a quarterback, a lot of that can be play calling as well. If I'm calling plays for a quarterback that's just not reading the field very well, there go my automatic lights again. Hold on. There we go. If I'm with a quarterback that's just not reading the field very well, I'm going to call plays that I'm obviously either handing off, maybe they're reading a zone read, that kind of a thing, or maybe it's just quick game where there's no thinking involved. It's just the quarterback getting the ball to a slant or to a hitch or just something just quick. Hey, let's get this quarterback back in his rhythm. That kind of a thing. I think that's very beneficial as well. So I think it's kind of a multi-folded question, to be honest with you. But I think that's a really good question, David. I really appreciate that. I'm interested to hear what Brian has to say when he comes back. But for me, it's just breaking it down simple. And again, it has to do with play calling as well. Just making sure that you're doing things to make everybody successful. So, Brian, I'm going to ask you this question since you are back. It says, this is for both Vince and Brian, since you both coach. When someone starts tanking, whether a corner, quarterback, or kicker, what do you tell them to attempt to get them back on the right track?
It's different for every kid. I mean, that's the thing, is it's just going to depend on the kid. Some kids need a kick in the butt. Most kids, though, when they're battling confidence issues, some sort of positive feedback is where you need to be. I mean, I think because the last thing most kids need when they're having confidence issues is to get ripped by the people that need to be building them up.
Absolutely.
But I've had some kids who that's just what worked for them. Mm-hmm. Just hey, if you don't get this right, I'm putting your butt on the bench and I'm going to find somebody else who can do it. There does come a point in time where that conversation needs to be had. And sometimes that's the thing. But I think it's number one. The keys are you have to be able to identify the problem. If you can identify the problem with the kid, then that's going to give him confidence that he can make the corrections. So if you have a kicker, hey, listen, look at this. Your lead step is too far. So you're starting to get into this bad habit of the balls. Your lead step is too far in front of the ball. So your kicking leg is hitting it too far behind. We got to get you back on track and have you step correctly. With a quarterback, it's like, hey, you're rushing your throws. You're snapping the ball off, and you're getting it out too quick. You're not you're not snapping the ball off, I should say. You're rushing your feet. You're rushing your reads. Let's get out of those things. With catching, it's like, hey, it's in your head now. Here's a technical problem that you're doing. Stop thinking about it. Go back to this, and you may show them film of when they were doing well. Back. Look at this terrible technique. Of course, you got beat on that play. This is Division I football. You can't make those kind of mistakes and expect to go out and win. So I think those are the things that you do is you can point out to times when they've been successful, point out the reasons they're struggling. Because if a kid is just struggling because it's in his head and you can't find something to address, then it's those get fixed a lot less often.
Yes.
You've got to be able to identify some, even if as a coach, it's not really the reason his technique is faltering because of the confidence. If you can turn it into a technical problem and he buys that, then he says, "Oh, okay, I'm good. It's not me. It's not that I stink. It's not that I can't play. It's not that. It's just, I got to correct this thing."
Right.
And then you're good to go.
Yep. That's basically what I said. I said I break it down into smaller pieces. I said some of it comes down to play calling too. If you have a quarterback, okay, well, we're just going to go to quick game. Stop thinking about it. We're just going to, hit some quick throws, things like that, kind of get them back into a rhythm, things of that nature. But it's all about getting back to the basics for me when I'm trying to explain it to a kid. So let's see. JTH1 on my betting side, I can bet Notre Dame to have over 8.5 wins this season. Gonna hammer it. How confident are you in that happening?
I'm hesitant to answer this, Vince, because I don't want someone to bet because of me.
Like put their mortgage down.
Yeah. Right. Number one. Number two, I'm not quite sure if those things are referred to just regular season or not. I don't bet, so I don't know, but I'd be shocked. All I know is that if when I look at Notre Dame's schedule, I'd be shocked if Notre Dame wins fewer than 9 games. Yes. Shocked.
Yep.
Absolutely shocked.
That's the best answer. And I agree. And please do not go and, put a bunch of money on it and then blame us if we're wrong. That is not what we're saying. But as I sit here today, I'm fairly confident that Notre Dame will have 9 or more wins. So you just take that for whatever it's worth. We are not telling you to bet. That is for sure. All right, Philip says, almost football season. Did you ever do an evaluation of Gavin Wimsatt? My brother is teammates with him.
Yeah, I did one. I did. If you just type in Gavin Wimsatt SI into Google search, probably the first thing that'll pop up is a film evaluation I did, or like a film breakdown I did of him. So yeah, I have done something on him, definitely.
Tommy Guns hitting us with a super chat. Brian, you got it? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let's hear your best pregame speeches as if you're in the locker room getting ready to head out onto the field. Okay.
I never paid attention to pregame speeches when I was a kid, when I was a player.
Yeah.
I never did.
I'm not a great motivational speaker. I can get pretty fired up. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But I'm very much I don't plan out my speeches. It is a spur of the moment kind of thing. I kind of just speak from the hip. So that's kind of how I am. And I'm like an in the moment kind of guy. So that's how my pregame speeches go. I've given good ones and I've given bad ones. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So,
I never paid attention to anything my coaches said when it came to pregame. I've always been someone that believes that if you're ready to play, you're ready to play.
Sure.
There have been times in their pregame speech kind of helped. I think the Lou Holtz Miami one kind of, but that team was already ready to play, which is why they got in the fight in the first place.
Exactly. Exactly.
But,
yes.
But I don't know. Like my favorite pregame speeches are like from movies,
because they're written by
Al Pacino's 1 Inch, Herb Brooks before they played the Russians,
right.
Those were always ones that I liked, but I never paid attention to those. My best speeches, I guess, were always impromptu in the middle of a game. You know what I mean? If we weren't playing well, I think I could rally the troops kind of well, but it was just more of an emotional in the moment thing. It wasn't something that was a lot of preparation that went to it. So yeah, I just have never been that guy. So sorry.
But thanks, Tommy, for the super chat. Really appreciate that.
Yeah.
We got another one down there, Brian, if you want to grab that one too.
Yeah. Of course, Newt Rockney's,
Oh, of course.
That one was one that gets me excited.
Of course. So Logan Hale, thank you for the super chat, Logan. Really appreciate it. Says, is Kevin Bauman hurt or is he being limited in practice due to a previous injury? Keep up the great work.
He was out there yesterday, right, Vince?
Mm-hmm. Yep, he sure was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just not getting a ton of targets.
Right. Yep. And he was running with the different teams and stuff. He's not running with the first team. But he was running. It was just Kane was getting a lot of targets with kind of that lower group. And he just wasn't. It just could have been the day. You know what I mean? But yeah, he's out there for sure. He's out there. Let's see. Christopher Sally. Yes, Christopher Sally. What are your thoughts on recruits working with private coaches in the offseason like a quarterback coach?
It depends if it's a good one or not.
Yeah.
I'm all for getting extra instruction and coaching. I think that if you have a child or you have a player or How do I say? Make sure that you find a quarterback's coach that's going to instruct you in ways that's going to be similar to what you're doing on your high school team. You don't want a quarterback coach that's going to say, hey, we're going to do it this way, but your quarterback's coach and your offense coordinator is like, no, we do it this way. And then you have that battle. You want to find someone that, number one, is going to be able to continue what is the philosophy of who you are. Or if you have a high school coach, because this can happen a lot more in high school, is you may have a coaching staff that says, hey, look, we know our limitations. We don't really have anyone that's great at teaching technique or footwork of a quarterback. We understand that. So work with that guy, and we'll then do the work to find out what he's teaching and make sure that we emphasize that when you get back with us.
Or have the time.
Right.
And that's always part of it too. I mean, sometimes high school coaches and, you just don't have the time to work on some of that kind of stuff. So it's good to have
especially like at the levels that you've coached, Vince, and this isn't a knock. It's just a smaller area. There's areas where I come from where, you can have, you don't have very many guys going two ways. So you can have an offensive and a defensive practice going on at the same time. It's harder to do that, like around here, for example, in the South Bend area. But
when your quarterback is also your free safety, or something along those lines.
The problem now is quarterback coaching has become like a big business now, and so there's a lot of people that see it as a way to make money. So there's a lot of people that have no business coaching quarterbacks,
right?
And they throw some expert name on it, and people think they're an expert when in reality, I wouldn't hire them to coach my middle school football quarterbacks.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
That's a problem. And then there's some guys that just, they feel like they got to do all these crazy drills to make it seem like they're doing something. That was always my issue with George Whitfield. Like, he'd be doing these dumb drills. I'm like, that doesn't translate to games.
Right.
It just doesn't. Right. Then there's guys like Steve Clarkson who isn't the glory hound that George Whitfield was. And you watch him and what he's doing, you're like, yeah, okay, that guy knows what he's doing. I'd send my kid to go with that guy.
Yeah.
And there are others like that, but there's just a lot of, I would vet them seriously. And I would allow, if you have a child, allow his high school coaches or college coaches to vet whoever you may consider hiring. So Vince was smart. He just hired me to work with this kid.
I just go to Brian Driscoll. He goes go to the source. Now he's a kicker, so I don't know what that means.
Yeah. It was a smart choice.
Yeah, it's probably true. Matt Romero says, ND appears to have gotten a handle on turnovers the past couple seasons. How much of that is a product of the offense/quarterback play? And how do you think opening up the offense would affect their turnover margin? This is a really good question, actually.
Yeah, because I think part of the problem with turnovers is they just didn't take chances.
Exactly.
There has to be a sort of a cost analysis, cost-benefit analysis that goes into turnovers. And because you can be so good at not turning the ball over that you've now eliminated your ability to make plays or big plays, and then there's, you're making a lot of big plays, but your turnover. This was my big problem with Brett Favre. During his really good stretch where the Packers were like won a Super Bowl and then playing Super Bowl, he was always going to throw picks, but there was a cost benefit analysis that you look at and say, yeah, it's worth it. As he got older, it became less beneficial,
right?
Because he was making so many turnovers and not making as many plays that it became a hindrance to what you were doing. So you have to find that balance. And for me, I felt like Notre Dame was too anti-turnover, especially the quarterback was too anti-turnover.
Yes, agreed.
Now, look, there's never an excuse for fumbles. I'm more looking at interceptions here and the timing of them, the location of them. If it's 3rd and 10 and you want to take a shot in midfield, take a shot at midfield, because if they pick it off, they're gonna have it at their own 15. It's as good as a punt, in some instances. I'm not saying do that, but I'm saying that's a good time to take a shot. Getting picked off from your own 5 on a deep shot that they're getting the ball inside, that's not as smart of a shot, right? That's not as smart of a turnover. But I also feel like you have to be willing to take some chances, knowing that sometimes it's going to go through a guy's hands and the safety's going to pick it off, or hey, I took my shot and it didn't work. But there's always timing. Hey, look, that's not the time to make that throw. That's not the time to make that attempt at your own 15. We don't want to try. We don't want you trying to fit a corner route in on 2nd and 8 at our own 15. At the 40-yard line on 3rd and 9. Yeah, take that shot. You know what I mean? There's got to be a time and a place for it. And I felt like with Ian Book, he was so afraid of turning the ball over that he just stopped taking a chance. And I think go back and watch the Duke game, Vince. There's a couple throws Ian Book made in that game early where I'm like, okay, there we go, including one he made to, I believe, Michael Mayer, where he it was like a deep out cut where he fit the ball. There was a corner here, a safety here, and a linebacker here, and he just put that sucker on a dime right in there. And then a series or two later, he threw a pick. And it's like he was never the same guy after that.
Right.
Remember that? He had that screen play to Kyron Williams. And the next play, he sails the ball to Tommy Tremble, and it gets picked off.
Right.
And it's like he was so unwilling to take a chance for like the next 4 games. And
right.
We saw the offense just not perform well the next, few games in the past game. And, South Florida, they didn't really throw the ball against South Florida. That was more running down South Florida's throat. And they ran all over Florida State, and then they couldn't do anything against Louisville because Louisville was like, we're not going to let you run all over us. So I think there has to – I wouldn't necessarily – they've gotten a handle on turnovers the last couple seasons. Just because you're not turning it over doesn't mean you got a handle on it.
Right,
because
exactly.
Not being willing to take chances isn't getting a handle on turnovers. That, it just – I don't see it that way. But it's a very good question.
That's a really good question because on paper, it does appear that way, but not in style of play and just like you said. So I agree. Dustin DeMumbrum. All right, that's a mouthful, but welcome, Dustin. Because I think this might be the first time we've seen Dustin. So welcome.
Yeah, it looks like a new name. Yeah,
I love that. Did some recon on FSU, and he probably just listened to our podcast about FSU, is my guess. But
I think he probably did a little bit more than that. Otherwise, why is he asking us a question?
I'm joking. I'm joking.
Nice, guys. First time asking a question, and you're busting his chops, Vince. Hey, bad hosting.
Welcome to the family. Okay, that's how we. Anyway, did some recon on FSU, and man, their interior line play is weak. I see Adamiola, Mills, Heinisch having big days in Tallahassee. What position group for FSU, if any, could create problems for Notre Dame?
It's a good one. I would say I don't know if I'd say position group, but Jermaine Johnson, their defensive end, concerns me a little bit going against a true freshman, Blake Fisher, and Josh Lugg. I think Josh Lugg will probably have a better chance of handling that one, but Blake Fisher makes me a little a freshman makes me a little bit nervous. Their running backs are really good, and if Notre Dame's linebackers play like they did at times last year, those running backs could create problems by making people miss and then also making plays in the pass game. That would be a little bit concerning for me. So just off the top of my head, those are the two position groups that give me the most problems. And if Jordan Travis is starting a quarterback, then you add the entire backfield into that because – again, if the linebackers are missing tackles and not being disciplined and things that we saw how they were last year, Jordan Travis can do some damage too, which is exactly what we saw in that game last year, which is why Florida State scored 26 points. A lot of it was him kind of, running around, guys losing contain, linebackers not doing their job, Jordan Travis making plays because people weren't gap sound and gap conscious and assignment correct at linebacker. So those would be the two areas where one on each side of the ball where I'd be most concerned about Florida State being able to create some problems for Notre Dame.
Actually, we have a super chat if you want to go ahead and grab that, Brian. Michael says, just want to say thank you for giving us the best ND content on the internet. Thanks, Michael, for the super chat and the compliment. Very nice. Travis Miner says, I thought Major League Baseball hit a home run, pardon the pun, with the Field of Dreams game last night. Can you think of a way for the NFL or a Power 5 conference to similarly combine competition and nostalgia?
The problem is a lot of the places where there could be nostalgia in college football, those buildings are all gone now.
Gone.
The Orange Bowl's gone. The Cotton Bowl, I believe, is gone. Yankee Stadium, the old Yankee Stadium.
They made a big deal about Notre Dame going back to Yankee Stadium and how they had so many games there.
But they didn't have games. They never had a game there.
Exactly.
Right. A different building. Right.
Yeah, that was a stretch for me.
The LA Coliseum is really the only one that, in my opinion, that still exists. Even like Notre Dame Stadium doesn't look like it used to.
Right.
It's fine. Honestly, I think that's kind of why I miss the bowl games. The traditional bowl games.
Sure.
To me, that is what made college football great. We were kind of we had something on our message board, Vince. I don't know if you saw this, but somebody posed a question like, what are the top 5 non-Notre Dame games you've ever seen? And 9 out of 10 of those picks were all bowl games.
Yeah, of course they were, because it was big matchups.
Right.
It
was Boise against Oklahoma. It was, you think of some Rose Bowl matchups. You think of, things like that. And I miss those. I miss that. I miss looking forward to that great Rose Bowl matchup or that great, Orange Bowl matchup where, Miami was going to play Nebraska or Oklahoma or somebody. I miss those bowl game matchups where Notre Dame got to play Colorado, and not in a playoff deal, but just more of a traditional bowl game. And then let's see how the chips fall after the bowl games, happen. And that's kind of why I put so much emphasis on when I made my college football playoff expansion proposal that it be tied into the bowl games where you make your picks after the bowl games. But honestly, I'd have to think about that one, Travis. Because I just think, there's not like really a movie. Because like that was based off of a movie, right? There's really no nostalgia there when it comes to Major League Baseball. It's a movie.
It was nostalgia because it was an old movie. It was 89.
Yeah, it was a fake story. It wasn't a real story.
It wasn't based on a novel.
Right. So it's now former Joe Jackson and they had the little crack about Babe Ruth in there, which I thought was great. We never liked the when he was alive. Or was that about Ty Cobb? I can't remember which one that was. Might have been Ty Cobb.
Might have been Ty Cobb. But it was nostalgic because we all remember that movie from when it came out. And
but it wasn't
dads and
It wasn't nostalgic from the standpoint of there was any real baseball connection to it, which I think is pretty cool. There's just that I can think of off the top of my head. I can't think of anything football related that matches that.
Yeah, the only thing I could come up with, Brian, because I Googled earlier because I'm doing something about this later. Top football movies, of all time, whatever. And none of them like play in like an iconic stadium or, any of that kind of thing. So that doesn't really exist. The only thing that I was able to come up with is Friday Night Lights. Maybe the NFL goes and plays in one of those big Texas high school stadiums, something along those lines. But does that really do anything for anybody outside of that city?
Yeah, because I don't think that has the same feel as that cornfield and all that cool stuff that went on with that. I don't know if that's
all I could come up with. Yeah. Any given Sunday,
have a game on the home of the Texas State Armadillos.
Right.
And if that's not on your list of favorite football movies, you're fired.
No, that's
I'm just saying.
I just watched it the
roughness needs to be on that list of great.
Just watched it the other day. Scott Bakula, he's my guy. So don't worry.
Paul Blake.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
You hire a new assistant coach without telling me? No, I found you a new quarterback without telling you.
It's great. I love that movie.
So
I might
funny.
have to watch it again. Let's see here. John Klimek says that's a good point on structure. How does that fall into recruiting, though? We knew Phil was that kind of a quarterback out of high school. Do they recruit them thinking that they can change who they are?
It's a different coordinator. Remember, Tommy Reese and Chip Long were not on the staff when they got a commitment from Phil Dracovic. And then when they got hired, that's Phil's kind of already there. And that's. I just wish they would have told him when he was in high school, hey, you're not a fit here, and we're looking for a different kind of quarterback. But I think they've kind of come around to it. I mean, Tyler Buckner's a similar type of quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
I do think Tyler is more playing from structure in high school than Phil was. But he could have been really good.
Yep.
Really good.
I don't want to belabor this point, but Phil brought his high school team to Notre Dame for a 7-on-7 tournament, and they ended up winning the whole thing. And so, the championship game is in the stadium, and I was in there watching it, and dude is just throwing dimes, man. I mean, just throwing dimes. And I was so excited about the future with him at the helm. Anyway, that's when I fell in love with Phil Dracovic, was on that day. But anyway.
But quarterback has still, look, let's take that out of the equation. I think that's why the Jack Cohn pickup was so good, because I do think they still have a quarterback that's capable of leading them to that next level. I do
too.
I do. Again, this isn't a shot on Jack Cohn or Drew Pines.
No.
It's more of just we think Phil Dracovic's really freaking good.
Yeah.
But I think Jack Cohn can be that kind of guy in a different type of way, and especially with the talent around him. In some areas, a guy like Jack Cohn could even be better for you because of what you talked about yesterday, get the ball out quick, make quick decisions, those type of things. That's not necessarily Phil's strength. It wasn't last year anyway. Phil's got to develop and get better in those areas. Now, how would that have been improved if he was able to play last year with receivers he'd played with before or in a system that he knew? That's a conversation for a different day. But I think that's an area where you don't necessarily need a guy that can put a team on his shoulders with this Notre Dame squad. You need a guy when you've got Kyron and Tyree and Austin and Lindsey and Keys and Davis and Wilkins and Colsey and Styles and Watts and, oh, by the way, Michael Mayer and George Takis.
Right.
You don't necessarily need a guy that's going to run around and do those things. You need a guy that's saying, hey, read the defense, see that fast guy and that fast guy and that fast guy and that fast guy and the best tight end in the country and the best pass-catching running back in the country. Get them the ball. Right. Yep. And so that's why I think Jack Cohn was really a great fit for this offense, because I think he can be that. Again, I use this. I've changed the term because when I say game manager, people automatically assume that's an insult because that term has been bastardized. When I actually think that's a compliment. Can be a compliment. That's why I changed the phrase to the point guard quarterback. Just give me that great distributor. And that's all I need you to be. I don't need you to score 30 points a game. I need you to have 15 assists, right? Because I got Jordan in the wing. I got Bird at the 3. I got, Duncan at the 4. I got Hakeem at center. I don't need you to score a bunch of points, right? I just need you to get the ball where it needs to go.
Exactly.
And again, I'm not saying those guys are Michael Jordan and Larry. You get the point that I'm making, right?
I do. I do. All right, Brian, that is going to do it for me time-wise. I apologize. I am at 12:47.
Okay. Yep.
So everybody have a great day. I will see you guys on Monday or maybe earlier. We'll see.
Thanks, Vince. All right, we'll try to dive into these questions and hopefully able to have some connectivity. Won't have any connectivity problems here. We got a super chat down here. Hopefully I don't get bumped. Connor Patton says, Coach, one of your former players told me that your pregame speeches had Shakespearean eloquence with flowery prose and heroic climaxes. I know that's a lie because I never gave a pregame speech like that. Vince is still listening. He is dying down there, Connor. So I'm sorry. I got to show that. Vince, that's Vince's reaction to Connor's comment.
Oh, I was just about to shut it off, and I couldn't. That was great.
Let people see how you were losing it down there.
That was great. That was really funny.
Yeah, your guy Connor brought it. Thanks, Vince. Sorry, Vince. I just had to get you back.
Oh, it's great.
See you, man. Yeah, I know one of my former players didn't tell you that, but I appreciate it. We can live in that fantasy world. Tommy Gunn says, I cannot for the life of me remember Schweitzer. I remember the name, but that's it. Help. Look, Will was a kid that Notre Dame got out of California last year. They flipped him from Nebraska. 6'4", 205, 210 last year. Athletic kid, played some linebacker, played some tight end, just thin, needs time to develop physically, but a talented kid, a kid that's got some athleticism, some tools, a guy that can do a lot of different things in this defense. So I thought that was a good pickup. He's just one of those low floor, high ceiling guys that, can he handle the rigors of college football? And that's going to be the question. William J. Stites asks, any players in Kelly's doghouse yet? It seems like there's one or two that get held behind. Also, people need to show respect and hit the like button. I definitely agree with that, Will J. Stites. Always love to show much respect. I haven't heard of anybody that's so far that's in Coach Kelly's doghouse. William, I haven't heard that yet. I mean, I know with some of the freshmen, it's going to take them. They're going to have to obviously win Coach Kelly over and do those type of things. But no, part of the thing that I have really felt, and from things I've heard from people, is this: Brian Kelly's really confident about this football team. And I think he's more open to certain things. Maybe if a guy can really help you go win a championship, then maybe you get over that. But I haven't heard of anybody like we've seen in the past. I think Kelly is kind of got an all hands on deck kind of mentality this year. Now we'll see if that continues when you get into week 2 and 3 of camp. But so far I haven't heard anything like that, which is a good question. D-Rock asks, what do you think head coaches expect from their team captains, especially before, during, and after a game? I think really the biggest thing is setting an example. I think with team captains, you need them to say, hey, look, if I'm asking people to be on time, you need to be early. If I'm asking people to, when you come to the weight room, you've got this, and this, you need to always have that. You need to be holding players accountable. You need to hold your teammates accountable. So not only do you set the standard with how you conduct your business, but you make sure that you hold the rest of your teammates to that same standard. I think that's a big part of what a team captain has to do, in my opinion, to really thrive in that role. When you look at how they go about practice, it's the same thing. Look, it's not only do you need to set the agenda, but you need to make sure that you're bringing everybody up to your standard. I remember talking to Alex Bars once, and he was talking about when he took over, after Quentin Nelson and Mike McGlinchey left, he talked about their two different leadership styles. And where, Quentin Nelson or Mike McGlinchey was more of like the giving the speeches and that kind of thing. But Quentin Nelson's thing was, if you didn't meet his energy every day in practice, if you weren't bringing it every day in practice, he was going to come at you hard, and you were not going to like it. And you just knew after a while that, hey, I got to bring it today because Q's going to bring it. Manti was that way from what I've heard from people, as far as like he was going to bring it every day, and if you didn't bring it, you were going to hear about it. And I think that's what some of the great leaders are. And then other guys are more of the kind of pick you up type of leader. So, part of that, D-Rock, too, is you have to pick a unique blend of players to be leaders, because you can't have 7 in-your-face type of captain leaders. And we're going to find out supposedly today around 2:00 who the captains are, but you need a nice blend. You need some guys to be sort of the in-your-face, some guys to be the lead by example, some guys to be the encouragers. I think that's what makes a good group of captains, in my opinion. During games, you don't really rely on captains as much during games, other than declining in penalties if they're, or if there's a problem, the referees go to the captains with certain things on the field. That's more about just go execute, go play your game. Because as the offensive lineman said last year, like once the game started, Jarrett Patterson was basically the captain of the offensive line. And so that's how I feel. Rob Pidoff says, if Jack Cohn gets hurt during the beginning of the year and misses significant time, are we in trouble? No, I don't. I've said this in the summer, Rob, and I believe it today. I think Notre Dame's going to be fine at quarterback. Now, is Drew Pine as good as Jack Cohn is today? No. Is Drew Pine capable of winning a lot of football games in Notre Dame? Yes. I think in that instance, I think you'd see both Pine and Buckner. And are those two guys together capable of winning? Yeah, I believe so. I believe they are. No question about it. Lotus Scalper says, this is the best ND team. I already bet over 8.5 wins on DraftKings. I'm seeing a playoff appearance this year. Certainly possible. So, boy. Michael Campbell says, can someone write an article with headlines countering how many returning players are on Notre Dame and star players that are still here, first stating we lost players around college football media? Michael, I don't know if you know this, but we also have a website. It's at irishbreakdown.com. Here, I'm going to put the banner down here for you. It's right there. I've written this article 20 different times, 20 different ways this summer. So if you want to read an article about that, go to my site and read the stuff I've been writing for the last 5 months, because that's exactly what I've been talking about. I've been talking about this very thing. So if you want to see an article about that, I know places that you can do it. If you want someone to write it, it's already been written, okay? And it's been written by me at least 20 different ways on all the different positions. So there's no question about it. Jacob Foreman, we got to ask this summer, and I can't remember who we came up with, but who do you think was the biggest recruiting miss during the Kelly era? Someone that was a realistic get. That is a good question, and I can't remember who we came up with. I think you can make the case that the biggest recruiting miss was the guy they got, and that was Eddie Vanderdoes. I still would have liked to have seen what Notre Dame could have been with Eddie Vanderdoes playing in front of Jalen Smith and beside Sheldon Day. I still would have liked to have seen that one. But as far as the biggest recruiting miss of the Brian Kelly era, I should have wrote it down from the last time this question got asked, and I completely forgot who we came up with. But I think you look back. Yeah, let me think of that one, Jacob. I'm going to do some kind of research on the side as I'm working through this as I'm working through the show. I'm going to try to kind of work through that and see if I can remember some guys that were misses. Corey D says, I agree with Vince. The sobering truth is this: Cohn is a better quarterback than Book with far superior vision on the field. The skill around Cohn is exceptional. The D will be stout. I'm pumped. Tommy Gunn says, y'all seem to be more optimistic than some other folks. Pete Sampson and Matt Fortuna. I have no clue what Pete Sampson and Matt Fortuna are saying or what anybody else around the Notre Dame beat is saying. We don't listen to that. And that's no disrespect. I have a great deal of respect for a lot of people on the Notre Dame beat. Not saying I really care much about what those two individuals have to say about things. But I can't worry about what other people say. I don't want what other people are thinking and saying kind of in my head. I want my opinions to be my opinions, whether I'm right or wrong. I want to own them and that they're mine. And we focus on that. I mean, that's what we do. But, we'll see. We'll see. I guess somebody's going to be right. Once we get to the end of the year, somebody's going to be right. Colin C. says, Kahona Kia is at fall camp. Papers, he is not going on the mission trip or whatever the rumor was. Colin, we addressed this about a month or so ago. I talked to Kahanu himself, and we reported that he was not going to go on the mission right away. The plan is that right now he is thinking about going on it after his freshman year or possibly after his Notre Dame career is over. But we reported on that a while ago that he was not going to be going on the mission as we first thought. It wasn't, and you can say whatever the rumor was. It wasn't a rumor. Kahanu said when he signed that he was going to go on a mission. That's what he said, that wherever he was going to go, they had to accept the fact that he was going to go on a mission. He since changed his mind, and when he changed his mind, we reported that he changed his mind. It wasn't a rumor. Michael says, Katrositz says, I'm looking forward to Cohn driving throws downfield and tight windows to our speedy receivers. I agree. Michael Campbell says, the difference from the SEC teams reporting news is they sell hype and enthusiasm, but Notre Dame news are finding concerns and issues and questions. What are we confident and sure of nationally? I don't know, Michael, what you're talking about. So, I don't read other stuff. The fact that you're coming onto this particular channel talking about that doesn't make a lot of sense to me because that's not who we are. So I like I said before to your earlier question, if you want to read people pushing back against the national narrative, there's a website out there. It's irishbreakdown.com. Read the stuff that we've been writing about. I do that all the time. Jason Smith says, so pumped to see speed in South Bend. Admittedly, was on the if we could just get speed bandwagon. Bayless and company will get them to maximize it. I agree, but it's not about Bayless, in my opinion. Bayless will get them to be fast, but if the systems and the schemes aren't designed to allow them to play fast, then it doesn't really matter what Matt Bayless is going to do. So you need those two things on the same page. You need to be able to have that kind of big play ability. Speed-wise, you need to have each player's potential needs to be maximized from a coaching standpoint, and you also need to make sure that the schemes are in place to allow your speed to thrive. I think I remember who my pick would be now that I think about it. And let me just make sure that I remember what this would have been, because I just remember who I think the biggest one would have been. Yeah. Okay. So to me, the biggest miss was Juju Smith-Schuster. At the time, he was John Smith. I remember Tom Loy was adamant that he was going to go to Notre Dame. I was not. I was just now coming back to covering the beat, so I didn't have any connection to this. But anyone that I did know that had any thoughts on it, they were confident Notre Dame had a shot. At the end of the day, he picked USC. Now, could you imagine Juju Smith-Schuster on the same receiving core in 2014 and 2015 as Will Fuller? Ooh, that would have been 2014, he would have been more of a complimentary piece. But, you look at what he did in 2015 as a player. Juju Smith-Schuster was pretty good in 2015. Juju Smith-Schuster in 2015 had 89 catches for 1,454 yards and 10 touchdowns. As a freshman in 2014, he had 54 catches for 724 yards and 5 touchdowns. I would have really liked to have seen him and Will Fuller on the same receiving core. No question about it. Yeah, that would have been one for me, that off the top of my head. So maybe Vanderdoes on defense and Will Fuller on offense. John Smith, who later became Juju Smith-Schuster on offense. Corey D says, what are you hearing about NBC and what will occur in 2025 when the contract expires? Honestly, Corey, I haven't heard anything. I haven't paid attention to it. I haven't asked. I mean, it's still 4 years away, so it's not really been on my radar, to be honest with you. Not that it's not an important discussion. I think now it is a kind of important discussion when you consider how all these contracts are impacting what teams are and are not doing when it comes to what they're going to do for the future, as far as conferences and all those type of things. It's certainly a problem. So for me, I haven't had the time to really dive into that much. John Rich, can you compare the relative strengths of each of the tight end group? I think for Michael Mayer, it's the all-around game. I think Michael Mayer brings a really, really good all-around game to the table. He's a really strong athlete. He's a really good route runner. I mean, all these things are not just for his age, but just overall, really good route runner, great ball skills, better after the catch than you would expect a guy his size to be. So just brings a great all-around game. I think George Takis also brings great size and an all-around game to the table. I think the difference is with George Takis, he's not quite as powerful and explosive as Michael Mayer is in the pass game, but he's still a legitimate pass weapon. And he's gotten stronger. I was told this summer when they did like the bench, like the bench max, where they were kind of working out and doing their summer test, that George Takis had the most reps of any of the tight ends. So I thought that was impressive to see. Kevin Bauman's strengths are he's a tough kid. He's a smart player. Knows how to get open on the short to intermediate throws, good blocker. Kane Barong, I think his combination of power as a blocker but speed are the things that stand out. I think once Kane Barong, the light goes on for him sort of fundamentally and technically, because they didn't throw him the ball nearly enough in high school. But his speed is going to be something. I mean, that teams are going to have to deal with at some point in time in his career. So I really like that. And Mitchell Evans, it's size. He's a decent athlete. He's still got a very young baby body that's going to have to get reshaped. But, I think he's got some tools potential. He's got a lot to learn about playing tight end, though, as far as route running and, catching the ball and all those kind of things. But there's some tools to work with on that. No question about it. Hopefully that helps. Hopefully that answered your question, John. Jacob Hayden says, new to Irish Breakdown, but with Notre Dame football so close, I've been pumping this content straight to the veins. Mike, I love to hear that, Jacob. My question, why does BK accept the lack of play and development at receiver favoring upperclassmen over talent? There's actually a reason for this, and that is you have to kind of make a decision as a coach. Do you sacrifice volume of scheme to get maybe younger, more talented players in the field? Or do you sacrifice some of those younger, limited players, limited from the standpoint of all the different things they can do, for veteran players who may not be as athletic or talented, but bring more knowledge to the game, so you can do more volume? Brian Kelly has always erred on the side of more volume in the offense. That's the reason for it. So it's not a specific thing of, I don't like playing freshmen. It's more of a we want to do all these different pass plays. No position is greater impacted by that than receiver or quarterback. There's just a lot more on their plates. And so, and look, this isn't just my opinion. This is what I know. I've talked to sources about it. I've talked to coaches in the past about it. And then I've talked to players. Players openly say how hard it is, how much there is on their plate when they're freshmen. And other programs don't do that as much. And then Jacob followed up with his question saying, as far as savoring upperclassmen over talent when the elite programs put the best 11 on the field. And I will say this, there's got to be a middle ground here between what Brian Kelly has done and what fans kind of think that he should do. The best 11 are not always your most 11 talented players. There does come a point in time where you can't have, 3 receivers that only know 3 routes each. You're not going to beat Bama that way, right? You're not going to beat Clemson that way. You're not going to beat Ohio State that way. If you have one guy that's that way, it's a little bit of a different story. But the other part of it too is it's the receivers coach has to do a better job of spending the time needed to get the younger players where they need to be, and that's been a big problem with Dell Alexander. I think Mike Denbrock did a much better job of that, in my opinion, and I think Tony Alford, to a degree, when he was the receivers coach for about a year, 2 years did a better job with that. You have to be able to coach those young kids up, and just to kind of dismiss them and throw them down to the wasteland of scout team all season once fall starts, and occasionally bring them up, but it's up to them to do all the work and come to you and do all that kind of stuff, man. That's high school stuff right there. This is college football. It's your job to go out and get them, and get them ready to play. Best coaches I ever had and best coaches I've ever heard of, and I've heard this about how Urban Meyer would be. He's like, look, if you don't get this kid ready to play, that's on you. He would say, this kid's going to play 10 snaps a game. And he would literally dictate that certain young players were going to play X number of plays per game. And if he wasn't ready to go execute, they weren't blaming him. They were blaming the position coach. I wish Brian Kelly would kind of be more that way, to be honest with you. You go to Coach Alexander and say, listen, if Xavier Watson, Deion Colsey, and Lorenzo Styles aren't ready to play, they may not play a ton, but if they're not at least ready to play and help us 5-10 snaps a game, that's on you. And I know there's other coaches that want to be able to have a chance to coach these kids up with the talent that we have. I wish he would say that. And I wish he would kind of have that conversation with a couple other places too. Not just sometimes it's with coaching and other times it's with recruiting. And that's the kind of stance you have to have as a head coach. You have to set that agenda. You have to set that bar. You have to set that expectation. And then you have to hold people accountable to meeting those expectations. Edward asks, will any of the August hammies linger into the season? Not ones that happen in the first week. As long as the players stick to their treatment, don't push, don't rush, don't do more than you're asked to do, and that they don't try to rush them back, none of them will linger into the season. Now, if anyone has a sort of gets re-injured, that could cause a problem. No question about it. Got a super chat from John Klimek. I appreciate that. Biggest misses, Taylor Decker, Urban got him, Anthony Barr, coaching transition casualty, Zeke Elliott, Notre Dame wanted him on D. Couple of those things. So I don't really view Taylor Decker as a big miss, John, because when you look at Taylor Decker and you look at kind of where he started and like when he would have started and the teams he would have been on, and he was a member of the 2012 class. He would not have started in 12 or 13, in my opinion, maybe 13. But in 2014, 2015, and 2016, Notre Dame was pretty freaking good at tackle. And I think Taylor Decker was done in 2015, right? So 2015, Notre Dame had, in my opinion, the best offensive line in the country and had 2 top 10 picks at tackle. So I don't think he was a miss simply because a miss to me is when you lose a guy at a position that, boy, that guy really could have helped you. How much more value would Taylor Decker have provided to the 2015 team, for example, than you didn't already have from Ronnie Stanley and Mike McGlinchey? So, I mean, I get your point, just him as a player and the fact that he was committed to Notre Dame so long. Anthony Barr, that's one, but I don't know if I can really blame, call that a miss just because, as you said, I mean, there was a coaching transition going on. He was part of that 2010 class. And then Zeke Elliott, yeah, that one was a bit of a miss, although I don't know if he would have picked Notre Dame ultimately, even if Notre Dame wanted him a running back. But, boy, he could have been really good for Notre Dame. There's no question about it. But again, it's not like running back was a huge problem in 2015, but I mean, he was better than the guys they had. Let's be honest about that. And I would have liked to seen him run behind that 2015 Notre Dame offensive line. There's no question about it. No, but those are good names. I've seen Amon-Ra as a name. I don't view that as a miss. It's not always just about talent, in my opinion. But I like when those questions kind of start these kind of conversations, these debates about things. Jason Smith says, do you think Estime will be the short yardage back kind of like Smith was? I think he'll have a chance, Jason. Yeah, we had some of this a couple nights ago. We put out an intel feature at irishbreakdown.com, or excuse me, on the message board at irishbreakdown.com. So it's boards.irishbreakdown.com. But yeah, we put some out there where, from my sources, Estime is certainly going to have a chance to be the short yardage back this year. Not all the time, because you still want to make sure Kyron Williams, who was pretty good in those situations last year, still getting that time. But Estime's been really good in those situations. He's really difficult to bring down in short areas. I'm going to try to wrap up some more of these questions. We're not going to be able to get to all of them today, so I'm going to try to find some of these that we'll get to. Facilitate informs says the secondary looks athletic, quick, smooth, and very confident. Seems like fumble recoveries and interceptions should be off the charts this year. Thoughts? I don't know if I'd say off the charts this year. I don't know if the group's to that level, but I definitely think it's going to be better. And I think the style of the defense per se is, I think, is something that should help it too. It's a more aggressive defense. And I think a more aggressive defense, a sound aggressive defense, tends to lead to more turnovers, especially if you have a good front four. I don't know if it'll be off the charts, but it should certainly be better than maybe it was last year and the year before that. Michael Morris, who do we play this year that you think has a better O-line? I think right now you'd have to say Wisconsin based on what they have coming back. There's more certainty there. I think North Carolina doesn't have Notre Dame's talent up front, but they've got 4 returning starters from a line that produced 2,000-yard running backs. It's a pretty good college group. It's not a great group from a bunch of future first-round picks, but they get the job done. They do a good job there. There's no question about it. Liam Gaming says, is there something wrong with Bauman? Not that I know of. He was at practice yesterday. Paul Argentieri, Brian, what is your education public speaking background? I don't have a public speaking education. I don't really have one. I'm not sure I get the question there, but or where it's coming from. But no, I don't, other than just being a coach and speaking at public places and being a youth pastor and, having to speak in front of the church sometimes. I don't really have a formal education in it. I just do it. I think I'm just confident in doing it. So whether I'm good at it or not, that's for other people to decide, but I don't have GS with the super chat. I appreciate that very, very much, GS. No question about it. Is it crazy to think Notre Dame has a good chance to win the title this year? I was shocked to see on FanDuel that 25 teams had better odds than Notre Dame. Teams like Iowa, Tennessee, West Virginia, and Indiana, to name a few. I didn't see that, but that's absurd. I mean, it's just, I've been saying this. I don't get it. I don't understand what people are saying. Like, what am I missing? Because it's just beyond me. And I don't know what the reason is for that. If it's more of a betting thing, that there's people just aren't betting on Notre Dame, so they have to lower their odds significantly to try to get Notre Dame fans to bite and jump on board, or if there's some other reason for it. I couldn't tell you. I don't follow that enough. But man, like I said, I don't get it. And do I think they have a good chance to win a title? I wouldn't say they have a good chance. I said I think they have a chance. If things kind of go their way, I think they have a chance. I don't know if I'd say good chance. I'd probably have to see some games first before I could go be that strong with it. But yeah, I think this team has the makeup of a team that can do that if a few things kind of go their way and a few things happen that we think are going to happen. But now we just gotta we gotta see it. We gotta see it. John Clement, Darius Walker caught a ton of passes in 06. He had like 50 plus. Yeah. The question, however, was of the Kelly era. And Darius, I believe, finished his Notre Dame career as Notre Dame's all-time leading receiver as a running back. But that was obviously not during the Brian Kelly era. So I'm not. And like Armando, the reason I thought Armando, because I remember him having a lot of catches. But that was obviously during the Charlie era and not during the BK era. He only caught 17 in his 1 year with Coach Kelly. Justin MacArthur, do you think we'll see a lot of two-back with both Tyree and Kyron on the field at the same time? Got to think they would really put some pressure on the defense. Yeah, I think we'll see that. Now, how much, Justin's a different question. If we don't see that at least 5 to 10 times per game, most games, like on average, 5 to 10 times, I'll be surprised. I don't see it being used more than that. I don't think it should be used more than that necessarily. There may be a game here, a game there. And if it's really working, sure. Yeah. So I'm not really sure how much we'll see it. And I think there can be too much, but I definitely think that we'll see it. No question about it. Carmine Burr, at this point, which freshman has been the biggest surprise? I think Joe Alt. I mean, Brian Kelly talked about this yesterday. I mean, he was getting some work with the second team offensive line at left tackle. Brian, Vince talked, obviously part of that was Blake Fisher was out. But look, I was thinking he would probably need a year or two to really get used to playing at this level. But so far, he's done a pretty good job and he's shown himself ready to play. So I think that's a very important thing. I'd say he's probably the biggest surprise. I don't know if a lot of those other guys I would consider surprises, to be honest with you. So I think, I wouldn't put a lot of those guys in the surprise category. I mean, Logan Diggs and Audric Estime have great feet. I don't think that's something that should surprise anyone. We've talked about this. So I think it's a situation where it's going to be a Joe Alt, maybe a Jason Onye if a guy like that can really step up. But I don't think it surprises anyone that Prince Collie looks really athletic, or that Logan Diggs and Audric Estime have great feet, or a lot of those other types of things. I think Joe Alt looking pretty good and pretty advanced and looking comfortable as an offensive lineman's kind of a big thing. I gave him a 4.5 upside grade, but the big problem was he never played offensive line. He played tight end his whole career. So for him to be making a quick adjustment to the position is something that it does surprise me a little bit. It really does. It really does. All right, let's see. I'm kind of checking Twitter here because Notre Dame was supposed to release something about their captains today at 2:00, and so far I don't see anything. But I just wanted to, if they do announce it during the show, I did want to be able to let people know what that decision was. But we still haven't seen anything yet, so I'll keep you posted if that happens during the show for sure. All right, let's get down here. Just your ordinary Joe. This is good. Why are you guys speaking so slowly today? Oh, wait, I know. Monday to Thursday, I have to play podcast 1.5 speed to fit you into my commute. Weird to hear you not as chipmunks. Never mind. That's got to be brutal, Joe, to hear it like that. No question about it. Jason Smith said, I like what Coach Reese said about being aggressive. If aggressive inevitably also means explosive, we could be in for a treat. Yeah, I agree, Jason. And I liked how Coach Reese blended aggressive with efficient. And I think that can be, sometimes you can err so much on the side of efficiency that you lose aggressiveness. Sometimes you can err on the side of aggressiveness and lose efficiency. I think the 2015 offense, for example, was incredibly explosive. Or excuse me, the 2017 offense was incredibly explosive, the most explosive of the Brian Kelly era, but it was not efficient at all, which is why it didn't have the 7.0 yards per play like the 2015 team had, which was a more efficient offense. So I think you have to be able to find those two things and fit those two things together. And I liked that when I asked him, how do you want your offense to be defined? He focused on both of those things. And I think that was really important. I like to see that and hear that. No question about it. Christopher Sally asks, this is a good question. Does Notre Dame ever ask you not to write about or discuss observations about a specific player? The only thing that Notre Dame has ever really done is when you're at practice and you see an injury, don't report on it right away. The reason being, if a kid's injured, they want to, number one, make sure that they can tell you what the injury is so we can report it accurately. But number two, the excuse that they've used, and I buy it, I agree with it, is they don't want a parent to find out that their child was injured because I tweeted it out after practice. They want to be able to contact them or have the player contact them, which I think is smart. Have I ever had a coach tell me, or anyone at Notre Dame ever tell me like I can't discuss certain things? The only other thing that I've had them ask me to do, and I don't know if they've done this to other people, but when I first started going to practices, I would kind of get real detailed on what I saw. Understandably, Notre Dame asked to not get too specific with the pass concepts or the different defensive looks that they were showing in practice, which makes total sense. Because now you're kind of giving away some trade secrets that you can't just from so-and-so looked athletic and those type of things. So I feel like those are understandable things for them to ask you not to talk about. I've never had anyone at Notre Dame ask me not to be critical of a player, not to praise a player. What they'll do is if I get information from someone at Notre Dame, they may say, hey, don't report on this until, a later time because we're working some kinks out. So there's a couple news stories that I broke last year during the season where they asked me to not report it till like 11:30 on Saturday, and they were going to report on it at noon. But because I got the news early and went to them to try to confirm, they said, hey, we'll let you break it, but we'd ask you to hold off. Now, a couple times that's burned me. So I was told by that Equanimity St. Brown was going to declare for the NFL draft. Notre Dame asked me to just wait, and then they ended up doing something with him instead and burning me. So that kind of got me in the whole, well, I'm just going to do it anyway kind of thing. The new SID has been great about that. She's been really good about that. Like if you go to her and you try to break us, hey, I got the story. I just want to let you know. I'm going to run with it. She understands she can't tell me not to do it unless she knows that it's not accurate or not true. But what she'll say is, hey, hold off. We haven't, the kid, there's some things that need to get figured out first. Can you just hold off? And I've done that. And I know other people have as well. But that's a little bit of a different situation. And those are the only times I've ever been asked to not write or hold off on writing something about a player. OC Irish says, guys, how does Fisher get a concussion before there's actual full-on contact? When do you see him returning? Based on what Brian Kelly was saying, he should be back Saturday. They don't practice today. But look, there's not full-on contact. It's the thing. Concussions don't always happen because you have this really violent contact. Sometimes concussions happen because you land on the ground wrong. I've only ever had one concussion that I ever get from a full-on hit to the head. And that was at the end of a half. I was a junior in high school, and some little midget linebacker came up and hit me right in the chin. I probably not allowed to say that or whatever, but came up and hit me right in the chin with his helmet right as I was throwing a Hail Mary at the end of the half, and I don't remember a thing after that. I had a really bad concussion. I played really well in the second half. I've seen the film. I threw for like almost 200 yards in the second half alone. So my coach kind of joked that he's going to hit me in the head with a baseball bat afterwards. But, like, that's the only helmet-to-helmet concussion I ever had. It was always, like, freaky things. Like, I got a couple more where it's like you land on the ground wrong. You get tackled and your head hits the ground. Or it sometimes can be something simple like you don't hit a guy hard, but you just kind of hit it in the right spot where it just rings your bell. So it doesn't surprise me, especially since it's the first time in months that you've actually been in any kind of head-to-head combat, and that's just going to happen sometimes. It doesn't sound like it was a severe concussion. It doesn't even sound like it was necessarily a full concussion. It was just a concussion protocol, which means once a guy shows a symptom or two, you err on the side of caution and make sure he passed certain tests in time before you let him back in, which I think is smart, especially for a younger player. Rye asks, what are you hearing about the back end of the defense? Brian Kelly gave a lot of praise to Bracey, Hart, et cetera, in regards to Eric Hansen's question at the end of his interview yesterday. Yeah. Again, we had some stuff. This is why you guys should all be members of the boards. I put something out before fall camp, just talking to different sources, and there's a lot of optimism about Cam Hart. Tariq Bracey, it's a cautious optimism because he's looked great in the spring. He looked great this summer. He's back to playing fast and athletic. Brian Kelly talked about him yesterday. But they just need to see him do it and get beat and then bounce back from getting beat. That's going to be the big thing with Tariq. But they love his talent. They love his athleticism. They love what he brings to the table. And there's also a lot of optimism about the freshman, especially Ryan Barnes as well. So, but we reported on this almost 2 weeks ago. So you would have got that on the message board if you were part of it. I'm just saying. There's all types of ways that we give out information, and that's another one. But that's a good question. Tom Blork says, I think QB play will be the key to a successful season. Again, QB play has been the most consistent limitation in the BK era. Also, a healthy year from Kevin also will make QB play a lot easier. I agree. I agree that QB will be the key from the standpoint of relative to past years. But I wrote an article the other day saying that I thought the receivers were the key because Jack Cohn's not the kind of player that if Jack Cohn plays great, but the receivers don't play well, then it won't matter. If the quarterback's just okay, but the receivers play great, the offense will still be better than it would be if it was the other way around. So big picture, Tom, I definitely understand where you're coming from, and I agree with it. I guess partly why I wrote the article the way that I did the other day, and we did the show the other day where we talked about the receivers, is because there's a kind of an assumption that we have that Jack Cohn is going to be pretty good. And I think that kind of factors into it as well. But just the style of play that he has, I think that it's a situation where Notre Dame needs to have the receivers play well. That's such a vital part of what they're going to do. So Notre Dame has named their captains for the 2013 season or 2021 season, and there are 7 captains. Those captains are, and I'm going left to right of what they provided. It's Kyron Williams, Jarrett Patterson, Avery Davis, Kurt Heinisch, Myron Tungavaloa-Mosa, Drew White, and Kyle Hamilton. Those are Notre Dame's 7 captains from this year's football team, which is the most since obviously the 2019 season when they had 7 captains as well. So those are Notre Dame's 7 captains for the 2021 season. So, yeah, there you go. Joseph Salvatore, strange question, but do you guys know if current players ask questions about recruiting, e.g., ergo, I think is what that means, correct? Would it be uncommon for Kyle Hamilton to go to Coach Freeman and ask how recruiting with Xavier Nwankpa was going? Not at all. I think kids have those conversations all the time. No, all the time. AJ says, happy Friday, IB fam. Next weekend, I will officially be a dog dad, picking up my 8-week-old Labrador retriever next Saturday. His name is Walter. However, if Kevin Austin has a breakout season, I might switch his name to Kevin. Yes, there you go. I love all of that, AJ. Love being a dog dad. Congratulations on that. I've never had a puppy before, so that'll be really cool for you. So good luck with that. And you might want to think about just preemptively switching that name to Kevin. No question about it. Notre Dame 2164 with a couple questions. Here we go. When talking about Notre Dame's lack of success in big games, most of these big games are coming in the postseason. Is it possible that BK just doesn't understand how to keep the players sharp during the long break before a playoff game? I think there's something to that. I don't think if I would fully accept the premise though. Yes, I think Notre Dame's blowouts have mostly happened in the postseason, but Notre Dame has not won many of these big games in the regular season either. They've just been more competitive. They were more competitive against, Clemson in 2015. They were more competitive against Georgia both times. They were competitive in those games, but they still had the Miami blowout. They still lost both times to Georgia. They're still they still lost. They still, if you want to count not like a bowl game, they're still 1-2 against Clemson, and 2 of those, one of those games was a blowout. Miami was a blowout. They didn't do very well in games against Stanford when Stanford was really good. They didn't start beating Stanford until Stanford started being average or bad. So I don't think they've won a lot of those regular season games either, if we're going to be honest about it. And a lot of the quote-unquote big games that Notre Dame has won during the regular season, with the exception of Clemson this year, those teams ended up not being very good. They beat a top 15 Georgia Tech team in 2015. Georgia Tech went 3-9 that year. Notre Dame went on the road and beat a top 10 Michigan State team in 2012. They ended up going 7-6. Stanford in 2018, when everybody thought that was a big win. Stanford finished 9-5 and unranked. So I don't think they've really won a lot of those big games in the regular season. The difference is most of those games are not blowouts. The Miami game is the exception to that rule and the Michigan game. But they're still losing those games. Brian Kelly's record against top 10 opponents in the regular season is still pretty bad. And one of the biggest wins he's ever had, both of the big wins he's had were, kind of have a little bit of an asterisk by it. 2013, they beat Michigan State, who ended up being 3rd in the country and 13-1, but at the time they were unranked, so it didn't quite have the same pressure. And then in 2020, accept it or not, there's always going to be people that are going to dismiss that win over Clemson because they didn't have Trevor Lawrence and Tyler Davis and James Skalski and Mike Jones. I don't think that's fair. I still think Clemson was still a really good top 10 team without those guys, but they weren't as good with those guys, if we're being honest. But it's still a win. It's not Notre Dame's fault those guys were out. But for the most part, yeah, it's been a problem. So Michael asked a question about access tomorrow. There will be no access for the scrimmage. Brian Kelly and Tommy Reese and offensive players will talk after practice, but there is no access to the actual practice. Get some more questions here. Papa Rose is excited about the season. 14-0. Notre Dame 14-0 this year. I think a lot of people will be excited for that. No question about it. Ryan MS says Xavier Watts is such an intriguing skill position guy. Assuming all receivers stay healthy, what kind of run does he get this year and in what situations? If all those guys are healthy, I just don't have a lot of confidence that they will play him as much. I hope I'm wrong, but I just need to see it to believe it. But I hope he gets a chance to play. No question about it. No question about it. AJ says 24/7 as crystal balls in for 3 5-star receivers for OU with Malachi Nelson committed. I think that says a lot about what kind of impact a Dante Moore commit could have on the 2023 Notre Dame class. Don't disagree at all. At all. EJ Wilson says, invitation to everyone to join the Irish Breakdown message boards. We have great conversations. It would be awesome to have more of you there. I agree. And I did not ask DJ or pay DJ to say that. We do. We have a lot of good conversation, and it goes on all day. I mean, we have conversations all day, and the more people that join, the more conversation we have. We debate, we discuss, we agree, we disagree, but it's all done respectfully, and it's been a really good board so far, and we're going to keep it that way. But we want it to grow. We absolutely want it to grow. No question about it. Bart Adams, game on the line. With this Notre Dame team, would you rather have offense with the ball trying to score or defense trying to make a stop? Is your answer any different than last year? I am almost always of the belief of I'd rather have my defense on the field to make a stop. I feel like there's always a little bit more pressure on the offense in those situations, but there are times when the Notre Dame defense was kind of not good that I would have rather gone with the offense. Like 2015, I did not want the defense on the field at the end of the game, which we saw against Stanford. Most years, however, I'd rather just have the defense on the field just to make a stop, because there's a lot more that can go wrong for an offense in those situations, because you can not do your job on defense and the guy drops a ball or makes a bad read, things like that, where offensively you've kind of got to make the right calls and the right plays, and you've got to make your luck happen. Defensively, sometimes you can kind of catch some luck. Liam Gaming says, I can't see Kane being effective in the screen game. Can you keep him in, send someone else out to block? Clearly, you can't run the play to the same side all the time. Yeah, you can, because not every screen requires the guards to get out. I mean, you can run plenty of screens to the right side. You can run bubble screens, tunnel screens, look screens, swing screens. All those things don't require the offensive lineman to get out. And I don't think that you run any screen enough to where it's such a great tell that teams are going to sniff it out, because you just don't run them enough. So I don't think it's as big of a concern for me as maybe it is some other things, but I do think there's some things you can do schematically to get either him in space more or somebody else in space more. I just don't think it's something that they need to focus too much on, because because this is a good question. It was asked on the message board, and my answer was, I don't think it's a tell that really hurt you in that we always run screens to the left, because the only way it hurts you is if they know the formation and the personnel with which, and the down and distance with which we call those screens to the left, meaning, we as in like looking at it from a coach's standpoint. It's not like, hey, when they're in this formation, they always run backside. That's a little bit more of a tell because you do it so much more often. But, screens to me is, if you're coaching a screen, I don't care how you do it, or that you only run it to the left, as long as they don't know when you're going to do it. I think that would be a much more important factor in all of this. Domer Grizz says, happy Friday. Same to you, Domer. During the early practice period where the offense is going in rhythm against get out period, how does the quarterback pick who gets the ball? Just whoever's the primary read on that play. Yeah, sometimes they'll dictate who they want the ball to go to, but yeah, it's usually just, drop back, hit your read and throw it to one guy. Sometimes you'll see a coach kind of there in the middle, and he'll kind of step to one side, they'll throw it away from him. You'll see that. You'll see that too. Chief Brody's in the house. Welcome to the show, Chief. Appreciate you. Got in a little bit late, but hey, it's all good. BRB says, won't be a popular opinion, but I think the 2021 expectations for Foskey are way too high. Very gifted, but probably won't break out until 2022. We chatted a little bit about this summer, and I think if the expectations are that he's going to be a first-round draft pick next year, like in the 2022 NFL draft, yeah, the expectations are too high. That's not my expectations for him, though. I don't expect him to be a 15-sack guy this year. I think he needs to be a 7-8 sack guy, and that's certainly reasonable because he had 4.5 last year and much more limited snaps. I think he needs to be a guy it has to be more consistent, but I think he's a guy that certainly can be a 7 or 8 sack guy, and I don't think that kind of expectation is too high. If you're expecting an All-American, a first-round draft pick, yes, I think that would be a little bit too high. I think he'll be good this year. Will he break out and be an elite player this year? I don't think so. I think that would be next year. So I'm somewhat on the same page with you, but not quite there with you. At least I don't think. We may be on the same page, and I'm just you're just wording it a little differently than me. Jason Smith, I love these two and appreciate all the time and effort they put into keeping us informed and engaged. You are most welcome. John Climax says, isn't Milton the starter for Florida State? He can do damage running around too. So same. Not really. Number one, what I said is if Jordan Travis is the quarterback. So Mackenzie Milton is coming off of a devastating knee injury. We don't know that he's going to be able to make it through fall camp. If he does, I expect him to be the starter. Number one. Number two, he's not the same kind of runner that Jordan Travis is, especially after the knee injury that he had. He was a pretty mobile guy, but Jordan Travis is a guy that you can just flat out call running plays to. I don't see them doing that a whole lot with Mackenzie Milton. As Eric Ward asks, Vincent Bryan, do you think this year is our best chance to win it all because we have OSU and Clemson the next couple of years, plus we will have an inexperienced quarterback? No, I'm not looking forward. I'm talking about this year relative to past years. In regards to why I don't want to talk about 22 and 23 is because I think this team can be really good. If this team is really good, then they'll be really good next year. I'm not afraid of Ohio State. I'm not afraid of Clemson. I don't think Notre Dame fans should be either. But the fact is that I focus on this team because I think this team can be really good, and that's where a lot of that focus comes from. Akunum, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your last name. If you can maybe put that down in the description, I would like to be able to get that correct. But he says Buckner puts Notre Dame over the top. He adds more to the game than any of the other quarterbacks. The two public scrimmage games, he led the only touchdown drives. Cohn is good, but Buckner is dynamic. I don't disagree with the last part that Buckner is dynamic. But again, being dynamic and being talented isn't necessarily the end-all, be-all. And the two public scrimmage games, I mean, we didn't get to watch all those, right? I mean, the blue gold game, look who he led him on touchdown drives with. I just think we have to avoid getting into that kind of thing, okay, and looking at blue gold games. Remember, Montgomery Van Gorder outplayed Deshaun Kaiser in a blue gold game. It just doesn't matter. Tyler Buckner is a very, very talented player. I've been high on him since he was a sophomore in high school. But Jack Cohn is much better than I think you and some other people are giving him credit for, and Tyler Buckner is still a freshman who did not play football in 2 of the last 3 years. He's going to need time. Being dynamic doesn't mean you can run the offense on a play-after-play basis, and that's what you have to do, especially with the talent that Notre Dame has. So Tyler Buckner's time will come. It's just not there yet, at least not in a full capacity. But as we've been saying on this channel all summer, he needs to have a role. You can't have a kid that dynamic and not have some sort of role for him on your offense, in my opinion. Patrick Barnes to the Super Chat. Patrick, thank you very much for that, buddy. I appreciate you always being a part of our show, and I absolutely appreciate you leaving the Super Chat. And Patrick says, is it just me? BK seems to never quite be able to put it all together. 1 year, great offense and poor D. Following the great D and poor offense. Following year, we lack a stud QB. Always something. I agree. I really do. That's been a big issue for Notre Dame for some time. It's like if you could put like the 2015 offense with the 2018 defense, Notre Dame can beat a lot of people. But then you take the 2018 defense and you put it with an offense that averaged like 31 points a game and scored 3 against Clemson in the Cotton Bowl. It's always been something. Or they have the quarterback but not the receivers, or the offensive line's great but they don't have the quarterback or the receiver. It has always been something, and it is a little bit frustrating. But that's one of the things I like about this team. I think this has a chance to be one of Kelly's most complete teams. I really do. And I think I'm excited about it. I'm encouraged by what this team can be. We're going to have to figure out if they can put it all together, Patrick. But, yeah, I mean, which is because it's a great point. You're absolutely right in what you're saying. I just think this team has a chance to kind of be that team. Domer Gris says, BK has mentioned J.D. Bertrand in a couple of pressers. Is he playing the will? Yes. How does he compare to Shane Simon size-wise, athletically, and style of play? He's shorter and not as long as Shane, about the same weight. He is a little bit more instinctive than Shane. He's more physical than Shane, not as athletic as Shane. And that is correct. He has been playing will. Not only was he the number 2 will yesterday at practice, but I've I've been told that wasn't just a yesterday. Like yesterday was just a Drew Pine getting ones snaps at quarterback. It was not a normal thing. I've been told for a few days now, J.D. Bertrand's been getting good work with the number 2 group with Maris as the ones. AJ says, maybe this is too hypothetical and irrelevant, but if Derek Allen were still here and things worked out, do you believe he would be starting alongside Hamilton at safety? I think he'd have a shot. I mean, I think the battle between him and Houston Griffith would be a very good one. No question. But I think at the end of the day, it wouldn't really matter who would start. The point is they would both play, and they would both play a lot, and that's important because they're going to rotate here at this position. There's no question about it. They're definitely going to rotate at that position. John A1 with the super chat. John, thank you so much for the super chat, and to everybody else that provided super chats today. We really, really appreciate it. John A1 asks, Aiden Keana looks like he's making a jump on some of the clips I've seen. What are you hearing about him? Happy Friday, joining late. Can't wait to watch from the beginning. So, John, I believe you are now a member of the Irish Breakdown message board. So what I would encourage you to do is go look for the D-line intel piece I put out before the season, because we did talk about that. But we can chat about it a little bit more here. And the thing that I've been told about Aiden is he's a immovable object at nose. And there's a need for that on this defense, because you have so many quick, athletic guys that are really disruptive. There are going to be instances in every game, and there are going to be teams on the schedule where you're going to need to put a little meat on the field. And Aiden stepping up, playing well, more assignment correct, better shape, being strong and physical. I think he's at a position where he has a chance to have a role on this football team. And it's not going to be a thing where he's the getting 50 snaps a game or anything like that, but it's a situation where he's going to have a chance to be a rotation player and a situational player, so goal line, short yardage. So yeah, I think he's got a chance to. I think he's got a chance to be part of this. I think he's got a chance to be part of what they've seen. I just don't think he's quite ready yet for the 40 snaps a game or 35 snaps a game. I think it'd be more of like in the 10 to 12 range in situational football. But I think he can help this football team. There's no question about it, in my opinion. Jason Smith says, I'm 100% disabled veteran and single father, so I can't really afford any premium content, but my birthday is soon, and we will be asking for a subscription or two, luckily, just as the season starts. So, hey, Jason, do me a favor. If you're able to, shoot me an email at brian@irishbreakdown.com, okay? Just do that for me, but we appreciate your service very much. We appreciate the sacrifice you gave to serve our country, and we wish you all the best. But do me a favor, shoot me an email here real quick at brian@irishbreakdown.com. Domer Grizz asks, what factors contribute to a sophomore slump? And do you think it will affect any of our sophomores this year other than Mayer or Tyree? Who needs to avoid it the most? So sophomore slump can come down to a lot of things. It's not always the same. One, Domer, is the obvious one, which, you'd know this one. Like, a guy doesn't put in the work. He thinks he's arrived. He thinks he's big time. And he doesn't put in the work. He doesn't have that same hunger. Sometimes a sophomore slump can be an injury. A guy is battling an offseason where he's not 100%. Stephon Tuitt didn't have a sophomore slump per se, but I think of him when I think of what I'm referring to here, in that after Stephon's great year, which was his sophomore season, he battled he had a hernia surgery, and so he was never quite the same shape that he was as a junior, so he wasn't quite as good of a player, so he took a step back. You could see that happen with some sophomores, and then I think other times it can be on the coaches. A guy's really talented, he's really good, and maybe you put more on his plate than he probably otherwise can handle. I think that's part of it too. And then, of course, the final piece is the talent around him's not as good, and so defenses can then focus more on that player, and they can take him out. And so his production's not what it was because other players haven't stepped up. So I think it can be all types of different factors, and those are, to me, would be the main ones as to what can cause that, in my opinion. And sometimes guys just play well as freshmen because they weren't necessarily great players, but the opposite of the last thing I said is nobody tried to defend them because they had other players so good, and the next year, maybe they're just not as key factors because teams prepare for them more, or they weren't that good to begin with and somebody else kind of beats them out. John Long just stopping in to say thanks, guys. You guys are awesome. I appreciate that. And he is now back to work. I will let Vince know for sure. AJ says, there was a point in time during the Kelly era where every summer I was constantly worried about off-the-field issues. It's nice that that feeling has finally subsided. Yeah, to a degree. And he says, and I hope I didn't just jinx that. We all hope the same thing. No question about it. AST12321. Are blitzes generic, or do they have specific blitz concepts versus run and versus pass? A little bit of both, but the good coaches are the latter. Now, like with Brian Van Gorder, he just kind of had blitzes that he designed, and they didn't necessarily fit against some teams, but he'd still run them anyway. Most good coaches will have them, specifically to we're trying to attack their protection scheme. So they're a Mike protection team, and we know that away from the back they don't have as many whatever guys that can contend, and they're not a team that has built-in hot reads. So we think we can get numbers off that edge, or they have a guard that's not really good in pass pro. So we know if we hammer the A gap, and the center has to occupy the defensive lineman, that we can then bring a linebacker right into that B gap, because we know that guard can't step down and then get back out to our athletic linebackers. So you may have some blitzes that way. Hey, their running back isn't very good in pass pro, so we're going to fly right at the strength of protection where the running back's going to step up, and we're going to overload that side and bring it there. So those are specific to breakdowns, the weaknesses of the protection scheme or weaknesses of the personnel. Sometimes it could be the weakness of the quarterback. So there's all types of things there. And then run versus pass, some blitzes are designed to do both, right? Because a run blitz is designed to do the same thing that a pass blitz is in a certain degree, right? Run blitzes are a little bit different because part of the goal of the run blitz is to make sure that you're occupying all the gaps, but you're also attempting to try to create a run through in one of those gaps to free somebody up to come make a play. Well, pass blitzes are the same way. Now, pass blitzes in their purest sense are different than run blitzes in their purest sense. But run blitzes are also designed to, if they are passing on that down, we're still going to be okay. Because otherwise, if your run blitz is just to make sure you have all the gaps occupied, and they're passing on that down, then you don't have enough guys in coverage, and you don't have an aggressive enough scheme to come get the quarterback. So that's why I say good run blitzes are designed to create free runners, and that free runner just has to know, hey, look, it's a passing down, so you keep doing what you're doing, but instead of getting to the running back, you got to get to the quarterback. So you'll have specific schemes, and part of your blitzes are going to be built around who you have. You may have some guys that aren't good at individual pass rushers, so they need help. Other guys aren't good just one-on-one pass rushers, but they're really good on blitzes. Some linebackers aren't good on blitzes. Some linebackers are great on blitzes. So it's also building around the personnel that you have as well. No question. Chief Brody says, should Notre Dame be trying to field and return more kicks and punts? Could that be an equalizer in some of these bigger games? Kicks, yes. Punts, you should always try to field a punt. I'm not as big into the whole got to return more punts as some other people are. I don't get as worked up about that, because I know part of the reason why. I think there are other things they should be doing differently on punt coverage and punt returns as opposed to just returning. But so it's a little bit of a different situation for me. But kick returns, yes, they need to have more creative and aggressive kick returns. No question about it. Chief Brody says, I should bet the under. This is the 8.5 over-under wins, because I am that much of a jinx. That way, if they win 10-plus games and I lose my money, I'm happy either way. That's an interesting way of looking at it for sure. Folklore, this is an interesting point. Says Aaron Lynch was a quasi miss. The reason I would say no to that is because Aaron Lynch leaving was more about Aaron Lynch than the Notre Dame staff. So I don't view that as a miss by them. I think that was a mistake by Aaron and a lack of maturity by Aaron, in my opinion. Rob says this is the second time in the last week we've gotten this comment about gold jerseys. This is interesting. It says, Brian, off topic, but do you think they will ever wear gold jerseys like Champion used to sell in the 90s and early 2000s? I would have to see the gold jersey. I think there could be a gold jersey that I would accept, but I'd be real picky about it. I could see that. I don't know if they'll ever do that, but I could see it. But it would have to It would have to be the right kind of jersey. No question. Connor Nepper says, Amon-Ra was a big miss too, but believe our skill players will be making a lot more plays this year. Go Irish. I agree with that. Again, I don't think he was a miss because I think Amon-Ra as an individual talent was a really good player, but there were some other things with Amon-Ra that I just wasn't willing to deal with if I was Notre Dame. Andrew Goss says, I really feel like we have good depth on defense. I agree. And he says, I've never been more excited to watch a defense. I'm very anxious about this defense just because I want to see it. You're right. I think it's going to be very good. I agree with you, Andrew. I think it's going to be very good. I just need to see it. That's the big thing for me. Connor says, we got Freeman on the sidelines with our defense this year. That's hype. Yes, no question about it. Domer Grizz, biggest recruiting miss for me is Paulson Adebo. Corner depth could have used a boost the last few years. Can you imagine Love, Pride, and Adebo on the same team? Yeah, that would have been interesting. I didn't love Paulson Adebo, to be honest with you. His last couple years, I liked him a lot coming out of high school, and I liked him early on at Stanford. So when I say I didn't love him, I want to make sure I'm clear on that. I don't know if it was something happened to him at Stanford or what, but he regressed in his time at Stanford. So that obviously hurt him. But yeah, that was a miss. Look, the guy that I really would have liked in that class, Thomas Graham, was a silent commit to Notre Dame. A lot of people don't realize this. And then they lost him. But another guy that was from that class that I think might have been an even bigger miss is Pete Werner. Pete Werner was really good at Ohio State and very underappreciated at Ohio State. I would have loved to have seen him in a Notre Dame uniform. I mean, I'm thinking about the 2019 team. If you'd have had him on the defense in this past year, imagine Pete Werner at will linebacker this year with Jeremiah Wusu at Rover. Oh man, that would have been really fun to see. John Erickson says, don't quite get the angst about Fisher. He has a full spring under his belt. Thanks to COVID, that puts him on the same level as any non-early enrollee junior. Not really. Not really. I mean, yeah, no, because a non-early enrollee junior still has a freshman and sophomore season to play. Yes, they missed a spring and those kind of things, but they still have two full seasons to play. Yeah, so I mean, I understand where you're coming from, but yeah, I can't quite go there with you. But I don't know if there is a lot of angst about Blake Fisher, at least not from us. So I don't know if I missed something in the chat, but I don't think there is a lot of angst about him. Oh, Dami Guns has a really interesting comment in response. So Domer Grizz said this about the Paulson Adebo comment. And then Tommy Guns followed up with Domer. That would have also allowed Vaughn to heal up instead of playing through his injuries. That's a good point, Tommy. That's a really good point. And maybe he could have got an extra year and, played for Notre Dame last year. Andrew Vandenover. How much of the lack of a vertical passing game can be attributed to the failures of the 2016 season? And how much can be attributed to the QBs to lead the systems after that season? I don't know if I'd put any of the. So I'd be curious why you think 2016 impacted that, Andrew. I'd be very curious as to kind of your rationale for that. Very interesting premise. I don't think for me, just off the top of my head, I don't think it had any impact. I think it had more to do with the quarterback. I mean, look, the vertical passing game for Notre Dame in 2017 was pretty good. It was like the best part about the pass offense. I mean, if you think of the Michigan State game, Brandon Wimbledon, that first drive hits Equanimity St. Brown on a post route. Later in the game, he throws a gorgeous back shoulder throw to Chase Claypool. That was their pass offense that game. You think of the USC game. I mean, he hits a first, I think their first touchdown was a post route over the top to Equanimity St. Brown. He hits a back shoulder for down the sideline to Kevin Austin for a touchdown. I mean, the Wake Forest game, he had a ton of balls down the field. So I think the vertical passing game, NC State, he hits Durham Smythe up the backside seam on an all verts concept against NC State, a throw that we just never saw Ian Book try to make. He had a really nice vertical route to convert a 3rd and 10 against Michigan State that he threw to Durham Smythe over top of the linebacker. So I think the one good thing, go back to the 2018 Michigan game. It's that huge up the sideline pass to Alizé Mack that gets them out of there. They were backed up in their own end zone. Hits Alizé on that. Then Alizé gets targeted, gets 15 more yards. He hits another goal route to Miles Boykin in a one-on-one on the outside to set up a score. Hits the big post right over the top to Chris Fink for a touchdown. And then a play that a lot of people forget, when it was 21-10, he hit Brandon Wimbush hit Miles Boykin for a deep touchdown again, and it got called back because Miles Boykin covered up the tight end. But, that makes it 28-10 right there, and it was another deep ball. So I think the vertical passing game was pretty good for Notre Dame under Brandon Wimbush when he hit it. I mean, they certainly used it a lot. I think the lack of a successful vertical passing game in the last few years has been more about Ian Book than anything. And even when he had some success with it in 2019, it was success against bad teams. He wasn't willing to do it against the better teams, and that was problematic. Brent Byer says, Estime looks like someone attached an air pump to him and forgot to turn it off. Dude gets around a sharp object. It's likely game over. So Michael Campbell says, my issue is that the information outside of Irish Breakdown, because that does matter, because that's the narrative and it's marketing influence. So I'm asking for more players involved with more reach. I just don't think that really matters a whole lot, Michael. I don't. I think if anything, it's good that Notre Dame gets overlooked because as long as they win, they're going to be where they need to be. And if anything, it kind of creates sort of an us against the world mentality amongst the team, amongst recruits, where, everybody's hating on you, and I want to go there because everybody's hating on you, and I want to go shut people up and prove people wrong. I mean, I think it can be a good thing, and it's never kept Notre Dame from being in the playoff or anything like that. When Notre Dame's earned the right to be in a playoff, they get there. So I get that it's frustrating as a fan. I get that. I really do. I mean, I read an article the other day about Notre Dame being overrated, and I just wanted to slap the person that wrote it. I read some of this stuff, and I just want to be like, what are you talking about? I get it, but I just don't think it's, I just don't think it's something that's debilitating or hindering the program, in my opinion. Lee Gannon has a super chat. I appreciate that very, very much, Lee. Very much. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Some more questions here. Brendan Kiscorna, I just wore a Notre Dame shirt on my backup college tour yesterday. Went great. Is Drake Bowen nearing a commitment? I don't think he's nearing a commitment right now. I think that, he probably will decide within the next year. He may be in the fall, next winter, but I don't think it's – he released the top 5 recently. I don't think it's like he's going to release top 5 and the commit in 2 weeks, at least as far as I know. I haven't heard that. But, I don't think he's in commit mode right now. William Offord says, my brain says Notre Dame is just much better than Florida State. History indicates, however, that Coach Kelly's business trip mindset has been disastrous on many road trips. Florida State will be sky high. Will Notre Dame be ready? Yeah, those. If you think about it, though, those disastrous road games haven't been recent, with the exception of Michigan. That was a little bit of a different story. Notre Dame has, handled their business. Look, the reality is Notre Dame has not lost to an unranked team since 2016. Like they're like 50-something-0 against unranked teams in the last 4 years. It's an absurd number. And so I don't think it's to me, it's and that's who Florida State is, right? Florida State's not a good team. It's the road games against the good teams that I get worried about. And I don't think Florida State is that team. However, I do think where I'm with you, William, is I do think that I don't think Notre Dame has to necessarily be quote unquote up for this game to beat Florida State. But I think if Notre Dame's not up for this game the way that they should be, game 1 against a name opponent, then that's going to tell us a lot about this team. But I just, so I think we can learn a lot there. I'm just not ready to, I'm just not ready to go to the degree of, can they lose to Florida State? I think it would be a negative and we'd learn a lot about it, but I don't think it would result in them losing to Florida State. Irishman 7114. I've been a Notre Dame fan since 2002. I want to believe that this could be a special year, but I've been burned too many times to truly buy the hype. Can you talk me into believing Bryant? No, I'm not going to talk you into it because I understand that. I understand the whole skepticism about it. I do. I'm very much a show me kind of guy, but as in an analysis standpoint, like as a fan, I actually lean more towards kind of you. Like I need to see it because I don't want to get my hopes up and get burned. But as an analyst, I can't take that fan mentality into my analysis. I have to be able to look at it and say, if I wasn't a fan and I was just looking at this objectively, what would my opinion be of Notre Dame? And that's why I have to say what I say. as a fan, if I'm just sitting back here and I was watching the show that two other guys that I didn't know were doing, I'd be a little bit more like yeah, I get what you're saying, but man, we've been here before. So I get that. I'm not going to try to talk you off that ledge. I just say tune in and let's see if they can do it. And if they do, we're going to enjoy this ride together. There's no question about it. Nicholas Grosh asks, 3 technique. We explained many of the terms in Football 101. Have many questions. Thanks, Coach. We appreciate your football acumen. So we're still having some technical difficulties with that computer, with the program. However, the good news is we've already done that one. So if you go to our YouTube channel, you'll see, and also if you're on the message board, I don't know if you are, I have the Football 101 stuff at the top. So anything we've done, that video is in there. We actually have explained 3 technique, what that is. The 3 technique is it's an alignment that's on the outside, like so. You have the center of the guard. It's the inside shoulder of the guard is the one nearest the center. The outside shoulder of the guard is the one nearest the tackle. 3 technique is the lining up on the outside shoulder of the guard. So the shoulder of the guard nearest the tackle, the offensive tackle, is the 3 technique. But check out that video because we did get into number 1, like what we talk about, but then also some not everybody uses the same numbering. And so we talk a little bit about that. But look for that video. We did do a Football 101 about that. No question. Irish for life. I am finally here and I can say something. Yahoo, I know you've been having a hard time getting in here and making a chat. So I'm super excited, Brad, that you were able to get in here, buddy. Really, really appreciate it. Matt Lass says, hey, Brian, been super busy, so I've popped into a few shows, but haven't been able to listen to the full show in a while. Apologize if it's been talked about, but any update on Nawakpa? I've seen some interesting interactions between Xavier and other recruits, players, coaches on social media. So I understand. I believe you are a father of a baby, so I understand why you're a little bit busy recently. So we'll forgive you this time. But look, there's not a lot new other than like from the standpoint of he's going to visit in the fall. He's going to visit other schools in the fall. The fall visits are going to go a long way towards his decision. There's also not anything new from from what I've been saying for months, which is the longer this one goes, the better it is for Notre Dame. The reason I say that is, and this is kind of what you're getting to with your question, Matthew, is that Notre Dame needed to build that relationship. Marcus Freeman didn't get hired at Notre Dame until January. Xavier already had a long connection with Ohio State coaches before Marcus Freeman even showed up. Chris O'Leary didn't get hired till after Marcus Freeman. So a lot of those relationships with Xavier and his family are new for the 2 most important people in Xavier Nawakpa's life from a Notre Dame commitment standpoint. It's not Brian Kelly. It's not Mike Elson. It's not Tommy Reese. It's not anybody else. It's Freeman and Chris O'Leary. So those are new relationships, and you're competing against a staff that had longer standing relationships, that he had that early affinity for, that the family had that early affinity for. So the longer it goes on, the more you can build that relationship and establish that connection and that bond with Xavier and his family, the better it is for Notre Dame. And I think that's what they've been doing, because remember, we reported this. He was on the verge of committing to Ohio State when he visited at the beginning of June. He held off. Notre Dame did a good job of convincing him to just take the visit anyway. And he did. And ever since then, so we're now 2 months since he visited Notre Dame, that connection, that bond has grown and grown and grown, not just with him and Marcus Freeman, it has, but his parents and Marcus Freeman, his parents and Chris O'Leary, Xavier and Chris O'Leary, and then, of course, Xavier and potential future teammates and other recruits. That time is what was neat. This is why I said at the beginning of this whole summer with Xavier, Matt, was, and you'll remember this because I know you were in some of these chats. The longer it goes on, the better, because it's time. The only thing that can fix what Ohio State had over Notre Dame was time. And that's what he's giving Notre Dame. And that's why I think it's trending in the right direction. Now, it could trend back. There's all types of things that could happen. But right now, I feel better about where Notre Dame is today than I did a month ago, and certainly a month before that. And that's a good thing. And I'll probably feel better about it in a month than I do right now. But it's going to take time. But the visit has to be great. That's going to be the thing. And we won't know that until that visit happens. Stephen D. Kish, what do you think was the major problem in Davey, Willingham, and Weiss's tenure? I'm going to give a real quick answer because it's a lot deeper than that. With Davey, it was a lack of, he was way too conservative. He was a guy that just didn't have the chops to be a great coach. Ty Willingham, straight up work ethic, and also not having the chops to be a great coach. Willingham did not put in the work. He had a decent coaching staff, but he did not put in the work. He did not have the chops to be great at Notre Dame. Charlie Weiss, for him, it was, he didn't understand, to me, the need to coach the fundamentals of the game. He was so scheme-oriented that it hurt him. And if you look at the first 2 years, he inherited a very veteran roster that had already been taught those things. And so he could just kind of go out, and it was all about the scheme at that point in time, and it was effective. But he made bad coaching hires on defense. He made poor decisions in regards to who he put in charge of certain things. They didn't recruit great on defense more often than not. And the fact is, he just did not run the program in a way where coaching the game and teaching kids how to play was a part of what he did. And that ultimately led to his failure as a coach. Nolan Aspars, if you insert Jack Cohn into any Brian Kelly playoff team, do any of them win a game? I think they'd had a shot in 2018. I do. It'd have been tough because that was a really good Clemson team. But I think they would have had a shot. I do. Matt Romero says, I recently joined the boards, have yet to engage. Matt, let's go. Get on that, buddy. You've got your Irish breakdown gear. You're on the YouTube channel. You're now on the boards. Get your money's worth, my man. We're trying, and that's what I want. I want more people to kind of get involved. Get involved. That's going to be a lot of fun. And I really enjoy doing that. Delusional Jack Cohn fan, how many really deep balls should we be throwing every game? No more than 3 or 4 really deep balls, in my opinion. To me, a deep ball is anything over 20 yards, and in that regards, I want to see at least 7 or 8 shots a game against most teams. But just the pure, real deep balls, 3, 4. And I'm talking straight deep go routes, play action, posts over the top of the field, 3 or 4 at the most. You really only need 1 or 2 if you hit it. I mean, if you hit the first one, that's going to have go look at the USC game in 2017. When Wimbush hit that post route over top for a touchdown, and it wasn't a super, super long post route, but it was over top of the defense to Equanimous St. Brown, and then hit that back shoulder outside of Kevin Stepherson, USC didn't know what to do. They were game planned towards stopping the run, and once Wimbush threw the ball over their head, now what do we do? And they were kind of caught in this no man's land, and then all of a sudden the running game just destroyed them. So, and I've said this before, if he hits Equanimous St. Brown on that post route against Miami on the first drive for a touchdown, and he was open for a touchdown, Brandon missed him, I think Notre Dame wins that game. I do. Because it takes so much pressure off what you do. So if you come out early and you're able to hit a bomb or hit a post or something like that, that may need to be the only shot you take as far as the deep, deep shot. Now, as far as 20 plus, that 20 to 30 range, I need to see a lot more of those. Those are seam routes. Those are deep drags. Those are corner routes. Those are deep comebacks. Those kind of things we need to see more of. But the deep, deep bomb that just drop back and throw it 50 yards in the air, 3 or 4 at the most in those regards. And you can really, if you hit the first 1 or 2, Lou Emoji told this story, and I loved hearing it. He told it probably 10 times in our podcast, and I loved it because it was relevant every time. He said this. He said, the first game against Michigan in 1988, Rocket gets put on the field, and Lou Holt, this is what Lou Emoji, this is how Lou tells it. And he said, Lou Holtz looked at Tony Rice and said, I want you to drop back, and I want you to throw it to Rocket no matter what. I want you to throw it as far as you can. And I can't remember that there was some discussion. He said, just throw it as far as you can to Rocket. And so he drops back. And because remember, back then it was those real deep drops. So Rocket was getting way down the field, and Tony just launches it 60-some yards in the air, incomplete. But what Lou said, the way Lou tells it is, if you watch Michigan, because they got burned, Rocket had beat them on the play, Tony just missed them. It changed how Michigan defended Notre Dame the rest of the game because they were so concerned, oh gosh, that guy beat us. If they hit it next time, it's a big play, and it impacted how they played. So those kind of things, you don't have to necessarily do a ton of them, but yeah, it can have a big impact. Tommy Guns, I did see your shirt idea. We'll have to see about that. I need to find a new shirt company anyway. So if anybody knows of one, let me know. Oh, here's one. Bruce Scherer. Imagine being the AD at a major university. You are charged with hiring a head football coach. Your choices are Eric Parsegian, Dan Devine, Lou Holtz, or Brian Kelly. All are in the prime of their careers. Who would you hire? I'd either hire Era or Lou. That's a no-brainer for me. Devine, definitely not. And Kelly, with all due respect to Brian Kelly, he's not the coach that Era and Lou were. At least he hasn't proven to be that yet. So I'd go with either Era or Lou. I'd probably lean more towards Lou Holtz just because I was alive during the Lou Holtz era. I wasn't. I was born in 78. Era was gone for several years by then. I think Lou Samoju probably have a different answer for that. If I can be so presumptuous, he'd probably go with Era, but I'd probably go with Lou, just familiarity. But either one of those two would be a win. It's a very interesting, good Friday mailbag question. John DeCrisio rubbing it in our face, still on vacation, and just wanted to say hi and thank you for all the great information. Need to head out to do a hike in a national wildlife refuge. Stay safe and have a lot of fun. A lot of fun. Matthew Edwards with a super chat. Matthew, thank you very much for that. Matthew says, fully agree with your bullishness this year, especially regarding Cohn, but let's say Notre Dame underperforms and finishes 9-3. What do you think would have gone wrong? Cheers and good weekend ahead. That's a really good question, Matthew. I think a couple things. Number one, I think the offensive line plays poorly. So not that they're just not, they're okay, but they play poorly. I think that could hurt the team. I think Jack Cohn either gets hurt or isn't as good as I think he is. I think the Notre Dame front four is not as good as I think it is, which then puts the defensive backs and linebackers in more tough spots, which I don't think they're necessarily capable of dealing with. And I think the final piece is there's just a team or two that's just better than we think it's going to be. I think those would be the four factors that would lead to Notre Dame being 9-3. It's just things not being as good, or Notre Dame not. Obviously the other one is Notre Dame doesn't make the changes offensively. They try to run the offense the same way they did last year, things like that, which I just don't see happening, to be honest with you. TJ Kreider with a great question. Do we think Under Armour ever gets the pants right? Well, they did it once for the Navy Notre Dame BC game in 2019. They did it right once. And if they want to get it right ever again, they need to go back to those pants. I just don't think that they will. And that's also partly Notre Dame's decision as well. But no, I don't think that they will. Let's see some more questions. Tatted Up Irishman, what's up? What up, guys? Not watching live, so I hope you guys ask some good questions. Just kidding, you guys always do. There have been some great questions today. Joe says, why does the Notre Dame administration always seem to slap the football program down when they are at the top of the football world? They did it to Leahy and did it to Holtz. Do they not realize that when the football team does well, money just flows into the school? I just think that's not always been. I think the current administration, look, I've got my issues with the current administration, especially right now. But the fact of the matter is they have done a lot to support the current football program, in my opinion. And I could be wrong on that, but they have done, in my opinion, a lot to support the football program. Now, are they perfect? Not even close. And there's a lot of things they've done that I don't like. But I just think with some of those other leadership, administration, it was more of I don't think they did understand that the football team did well. But I think part of it, too, is a lot of them just didn't like the fact that the football team had such an influence because they felt it took away from the Catholic mission and the academic reputation and things like that. And they were hostile, openly hostile to the football program. So just the arrogance of academia sometimes. And I don't mean that altogether because I think there's a lot of people in academics that support the football program and understand the value that it brings. But there are some who despise sports, especially football, because it's the most, perceived masculine of all the sports in an era where masculinity has somehow turned into a bad thing with some people. So I see that, but it's not just Notre Dame. Go watch the story of the U. That tremendous 30 for 30 the ESPN did. Their president had the same problem. That football team was bringing tons of money in that football program. He didn't like it, and it was all about reputation. And academics and just, we don't want that kind of influence in our university. It's just, it's not unique to Notre Dame. It's just at Notre Dame, it was maybe more damaging. Irish Medic says, hey guys, I'm a former New Jersey guy who is coming to you from Galway, Ireland. Do you think Drew White is going to have more of an impact this year, as I think he was doing too many things last year? I think so. I do. I think it's all going to be determined by the will linebacker position, whether it's Marist or JD or Shane or all of them. I think if that position instills confidence in the rest of the players, then that's going to allow Drew to do his job. And as long as he stays healthy, I think Drew's going to have a good – look, last year, not playing great, he had 9 tackles for loss. If he can play within himself and focus more on himself once the ball snapped, I think he can have a really good year. I really do. Mark Jordan, this is going to be the same answer, Mark. Which of the 2023 quarterbacks are you most impressed with, and which do you think we have a chance to land? Dante Moore for both of them. No question. Patrick McGrain says 2012 Oklahoma was a big win in my opinion. I know that they were slightly down from their standards, but it was a Norman. It was a Norman, and they went 10-3. That was a top 15 team. Yes, no question. That was a big win. Yeah, you're right about that, Patrick. That was a big win, and it was a game where they were a top 10 team at the time. They would have finished as a top 10 team if Notre Dame didn't beat them. That's the other thing is they finished 15th, but if they don't lose, they finished 15th because they went 10-3. If they don't go 10-3, they're probably closer to a top 10 team. If they would have beat Notre Dame, they would have been much higher, ranked higher. So yes, but yeah. That was a big win. That was a big win. Sean Rogers, I would love for Brian to have a one-on-one interview with Brian Kelly. The love-hate clash would be incredible. Please make it happen. I'll try, but it's not going to happen this year. Can try for next offseason, but I don't see it happening. I just don't. Larry asks, would you wear blue pants with those gold jerseys? I would go all white. I would go white pants, gold and gold. Cesar says, I pass by to leave my greetings and my like. Thank you for that. I'll be listening the entire live later today. No time right now between clients. Have a great weekend. Greetings from Woodland Hills, California. Thank you, Cesar, for stopping by. Hope you enjoy the show when you finally get a chance to watch it. Donnie Cruz says, I can see the running game being way too predictable with Zeke at guard, using him to pull and not running to his side, especially versus the bigger defensive teams. Maybe we can use Zeke to play fake. I don't think it's going to finish up and use him to pull and pass pro with his athleticism. I don't think Zeke, I'm worried about things being kind of telegraphed to his side. I don't think the run game is going to be telegraphed at all. I don't think there's any issues with the offensive lineman that are going to make it a easy to predict run game. I don't think there's any inherent weaknesses that would do that. In my opinion, I just don't. And if anything, it would be to the other side, to Kane's side. Lee Gannon says, fantasy time. I believe that Notre Dame will be forced to join a conference. My fantasy is joining the ACC and bringing West Virginia, Maryland, and Central Florida with them. Odds. So you're talking about going to a full 18-team power conference, right? So not just a 16-team super conference, but an 18-team super conference, which I don't love that, but I would still rather have – I would still like to have Penn State. So if I could have Penn State instead of Maryland or instead of West Virginia, I would do that. If I couldn't get Penn State, I'd have no problem with that trio. And again, because it's good basketball schools, which is obviously important to the ACC. You're bringing in a big market. You're bringing in 2 big markets, Orlando and then Maryland, the DC Baltimore area. And then you're bringing in a good program in West Virginia. West Virginia doesn't do a whole lot for you monetarily, but it does do a lot for you. Do good things for you athletically. So I think there's some benefit there. But again, if I could get Penn State, I'd get Penn State. So we're talking fantasy. I'd rather have Penn State. If you can't get Penn State, I got no problem with those 3 schools. I really don't. It would make sense in a lot of different ways. Brent Byer says, is this the year that Notre Dame corners get their heads or turned in coverage? Every big game they play, I see corner running around blindly with zero clue as to where the ball is or when it's coming. I would say that just because they don't turn back for the ball doesn't mean they don't know when it's coming. That is a common misconception. There are a lot of DB coaches that do not like to teach their corners to look back at the ball. They're going to teach you to play the hands. If you go look at two of the big pass breakups that Tariq Bracy had against Georgia, he didn't look back for the ball. He played the hands of the receiver. And when the receiver shoots his hands, you shoot your hands down on his. That's what you're taught. That's a successful way of doing it. And there are times when looking back for the ball is a bad thing. So I know that's a big thing for some fans, but there's a time and a place to look back for the ball. Hopefully they do that this year. There's a time and a place to play the ball or to play the hands of the receiver. And good coaches will teach both. And people need to understand that. No question. Cesar, let's click on the like button, people. It's free, guys. It's free, and you help the channel. And all of those things are true. WJS, biggest recruiting miss, in my opinion, is Barr, whose uncle was a Notre Dame legacy. He went to UCLA, I believe. He did go to UCLA. But again, I can't really fault the staff for that one because it was during that transition year. And a lot of his recruitment happened during the Charlie Weiss era when Notre Dame was just a dumpster fire of a program at that time. Tyler says, how do you see the O-line gelling this year? If we're at least adequate, we'll go a long way. Agree. Not to be concerned with D-line dominating. We have studs all along the D-line. Got to help O-line in the long run. To a degree, it helps them in the long run. But here's the other thing about that, too, is, and Vince and I talked about this yesterday, I'm not too concerned if the defense is beating the offensive line in the first week of practice. I'm not. I've seen that happen before on teams that I've been on that had really good O-lines. I've seen that happen before on teams where Notre Dame had good O-lines. The only time I ever remember a defensive line just getting crushed early in fall camp was 2017, and we found out why. Number one, you were coming off of 3 years of Brian Van Gorder coaching the defense, and you were still learning Mike Elko's defense. And number two, it was the best, most physical offensive line in the entire country. So most years that the defense is ahead of the offense in the first week. Brent Byer says the national media, ESPN, Colin Cowherd, keep the Notre Dame narratives alive, perpetuating them. Getting guns smoked in major games doesn't help them, though. That's absolutely right. Absolutely right. And as long as that continues to happen, those narratives exist. Andrew Goss just comes out and says it. I love it. People calling Notre Dame overrated by using our losses to Alabama and Clemson is a brain-dead argument and should be humored and hammered. I agree. Robert Rhodes, Brian, what do you think our chances are with Zach Rice and Xavier Nwankpa? I'd say about 30% with Zach Rice. I'd say right now I'd lean towards about 60% with Xavier Nwankpa, but a lot to be done with both of them. Tommy Guns, who does IB Nation dislike more, Michigan or SEC? I would say Michigan. And I know that I'm not supposed to say that, but whatever. Brent says, I hate Ohio State quite a bit lately, especially their obnoxious fans on Twitter. Yep, I get that. I just, I've taken such a different stance on Twitter the last year, and it's been so much more relaxing. Like, people start name calling, just block them. I don't even get into that. And some people get their feelings hurt, and they get all emotional about blocking people. I don't care. If you're going to be ignorant and you're going to come in insults, if you're going to be stupid, just block them. Don't even sweat it. Don't even worry about it. Life's too short to deal with that kind of stuff. People don't want to debate like grown-ups. Just block them. If Ohio State fans jump into your timeline, just block them. It's not worth having the hate and the frustration with it. Twitter can be a real toxic place if you don't deal with it right. And it was very toxic for me for a long time until I just said, I don't care anymore. It's not my website. Twitter doesn't pay me. No one's paying me on Twitter. So I don't have to debate or listen to anybody. So I'm going to choose who I listen to and choose who gets to see what I say. And it's been very cathartic to kind of take that opinion. And I get pissed a lot less ever since I kind of took that different approach with Twitter. I would encourage you to do that. John Erickson says, sorry, it wasn't implying it was coming from you. Just wanted to point out he's not really a true freshman in the old sense of the word. If he's a stud, I'd rather have him start 3 years instead of 2. Yeah, I disagree with that. I agree with that part of it, John. I'm not stressed about Blake Fisher. I think Blake's he's going to look like a talented true freshman. He's going to have some moments where you're like, yep, that's a true freshman move right there. And then he's going to have other plays where he's going to be like, yep, that's a top 10 NFL draft pick move right there. That's just going to happen. And I can live with some of the mistakes because he's going to be really good at times. But he is still a true freshman, and I get where you're coming from. He does have 15 extra practices in a semester of school, but at the end of the day, he still has never played a college football game. He's still never been on the field during a college football game, and that to me is more important than do you have an extra semester of those things? I think that stuff prepares him more for the first game. And so I think you're right there. But for me, I still need to see him play games. Because at the end of the day, I think, John, you probably know this, and I'm assuming you know this. We've seen it before. You can look great in practice, but until you can do it on game day, we don't really know who you are as a player yet. Tyler says, saw BK, said Kyle Hamilton had a transformational spring. Where does he improve his game? I know you said previously him standing on the sidelines helps his mental side. I just think assignment correctness, knowing how to fit within the defense, just the overall experience he gained from last year, being a little bit better tackler, being a guy that kind of takes a little bit better angles of the football. At times he was able to make plays, but he had to use his athleticism to make those plays because he took bad angles. Just knowing how the defense is going to try to manipulate him is something he'll learn. Perfect example, the ACC title game. Clemson's got Amari Rodgers, their best player, in a one-on-one against Sean Crawford. The only danger for Clemson on that play is Kyle Hamilton standing right in the middle of the field playing free safety, cover one. So what Trevor Lawrence does, he drops back. He looks to his right. He gets Kyle Hamilton to jump. As soon as he sees Kyle Hamilton jump, he comes right back and bangs the seam route for a touchdown. That's just something Kyle's going to have to learn from. And those are all parts of the maturity process of a player who was just a sophomore, who was just a first-year starter last year. I think those type of things can really help. Michael Campbell is fired up today. He says, I think we need an Irish Breakdown army of fans of what you are writing as far as articles and us as fans posted on to the Paul Feinbaum's ESPN College Game Day host, the CFB on Fox. Remind us weekly. Yes, you guys should always – I think I would love that if you guys started posting the stuff that I write that about this team and things like that. Absolutely do that. I would love that. It not only would be good for the channel, but, yeah, I would love to spark that debate. Like, hey, you guys come at this – how about this data? How about this analysis? Because I think the one thing that makes us unique is we don't just kind of like, oh, ESPN sucks or the SEC is overrated. But if I'm going to write an article about that, it's going to have data. It's going to have analysis. It's going to have things that you can use as ammunition to kind of engage in those battles. No question about it. And Brent, let's see, dropping dimes. I know you hate game day show, but I hate they go to the USC game, which is the one I'm going to. But I hope they go, I think is what he said. Dan Diaco, does having 7 captains diminish the true meaning of a captain? Should be one for offense and one for defense. Dan, I think it just depends on the team. I think it just depends on the makeup of the team. I think it also depends on what each captain gives you. I think when you look at that group of players, each of those players have very different personalities. And I think there can be some merit to that. I think there's a hierarchy of captaincy that has to be established, certainly. But I don't think it does in theory. I think there's times when only having one on both sides of the ball can be problematic. I think there's times when having too many can be problematic. It just depends on the makeup of your team. And that's the interesting thing about football is teams are just so different. They're just so different. They really are. And it just depends on the makeup of your team. But I understand your concern, and it's a legitimate initial response concern. And I'm not saying that you're necessarily wrong. I don't know if you're wrong. We're going to find out in the fall. And that's why I say it just depends. It just depends on the team. Rippy720 says, just joined up. How do you think the SEC growth affects Notre Dame? I don't think the SEC growth affects Notre Dame. I think what would affect Notre Dame is what other conferences do to respond to it. If they overreact and allow the SEC to dictate what they do, then it'll have a ripple effect that eventually reaches Notre Dame. If those other teams say, hey, screw the SEC, they want to do that, that's fine. We're going to do things to build up our brand. We're not worried about expanding. Then I think those things can, and if we are going to expand, we're going to expand smartly and in our time frame. Then at the end of the day, I don't think that affects Notre Dame very much. But if they overreact and it causes a ripple effect of bad decisions, which is my fear, then yes, it could eventually affect Notre Dame because it could get to a situation where the way that these super conferences schedule, having 20 teams or 18 teams, it can make scheduling very hard. If you're going to play, let's say they go to divisions. If you have nine opponents in your division, plus you're going to play at least one carryover game, you're talking about playing 10 conference games a year. You're not going to schedule Notre Dame. That could get problematic. Tyler says, in recent memory, thought Deshaun Kaiser threw a pretty deep ball. Where did he fall short with the NFL? The Browns and Hugh Jackson just ruined him. No, Deshaun's problems began before Deshaun got to the college or the NFL. Deshaun had issues in Notre Dame that had nothing to do with Brian Kelly not developing him or anyone else not developing him. Deshaun was a very immature young man that did not have the right attitude to be a great leader. And I think that he didn't develop his game the way that he needed to develop his game. And once you kind of develop that reputation, you're going to be hurt. And do I think that the Browns and Hugh Jackson hurt him? Probably. I can't say for sure because I don't follow the NFL enough, but Deshaun had issues before he showed up in the NFL. He had maturity issues that were there before he showed up in the NFL. Let me see if we get a few more questions here, and then I got a roll here. So let's see here. Nolan says, all right, I know it's still early in camp and you always have a really good feel for where players are developing, but is anyone surprising you even you this fall? Not really. It's too early for that. Plus, I haven't been at the practices yet. So, no, not yet. I would always sort of hold off having an opinion changed early in fall camp. Now, an opinion can be confirmed. Okay, my concern with Kevin Austin was what? Health. Is the foot okay? Is he going to be explosive again? He doesn't need 3 weeks to show me that. He's showing me that now. Now I just need to see him stay healthy, right? Same with Braden Lindsey. So I wouldn't say that. I think Marist is kind of has been pleasant surprise more so, but the talent was always there. So it's not a surprise even there. It's more of a, I guess pleasant surprise, probably a bad expression to use. It's more of a, okay, is he going to finally turn it on or not? But the talent was always there. So far, no, I have not seen that at all. This is great. Ronnie, our guy Ronnie T'Challa, who's been going through chemo this whole summer, says no more chemo, people. Now let's party and get some Notre Dame football going. That is amazing, Ronnie. Congratulations on that, buddy. That is exciting news. Exciting news. The great news. Okay, Zach, Zach Garza has a great question. I hope it's okay to ask this kind of question here. My wife and I are going to a game this year. It'll be my second time seeing Notre Dame live, her first. It will be our first game in South Bend. What are some must-see do things on campus? So, Zach, there's do you guys remember that Big Ten feature that we did on our site, like the Notre Dame and the Big Ten and why Notre Dame didn't join the Big Ten? The guy that wrote that, Andrew McDonough, he did a phenomenal job for that. He's a Notre Dame fan. He's actually going to be a contributor at Irish Breakdown this year. The piece he just finished up, he emailed it to me last night. We're going to go over it, but we're going to post it out here in another week or two. It's a must see. It's an ultimate fan guide when you come for Notre Dame game. So we're going to have all the activities from like Friday on to Sunday, all the different activities that you have to do, that, you know, the from the pep rally to trumpets under the dome, to the player walk, you know, to all those different things. We're going to have all that stuff. So, Zach, I won't answer that question now. It's a longer answer. And some of the things I don't know because Saturdays are work days for me, so I haven't done all those things. But we're going to put something together like that, and we're going to post it on the website. It won't be on the message board. Like, it'll be on the message board. It'll be a free article. So it won't be only on the message board. So look for that. I think it's going to be a great resource. And we had a couple people this summer ask the question that you're asking, Zach. And so I kind of thought of this. This would be a great idea to have like an article that people can always reference to when you come visit a Notre Dame game. What should you do? And so we'll have that for you. I think it's going to be awesome. He does great work. He's a great researcher. He's a Notre Dame grad too. So a lot of stuff he's going to know. And so I think it's going to be really cool. So keep an eye out for that, Zach, because I think that'll really help you a lot. Irish for Life. Brian, as this is Free for All Friday, what do you think about the Indiana Hoosiers this year? How many wins are realistic this season? Well, here's an issue that I have with Indiana. I think Tom Allen's a great coach. I think he's a great guy. I think that team has improving talent, but I'm not quite getting some of the hype. So I'm looking at this Lindy's, for example, and Lindy's has Indiana 20th. And I get it. I think they kind of benefited from, they had that close win or close loss to Ohio State that really wasn't as close as people made it out to be. They were losing 35-7 at one point in time, but that's the perception. People look at it. They got a lot of starters coming back, but I don't think that they're quite as talented as some people think. And here's the bigger thing for me. I think the schedule, and this is the thing that has to be taken into context when you're talking about a team like this. Here's why I'm not as high on Indiana. They play at Iowa, at Penn State, at Maryland, at Michigan, and at Purdue, which won't be easy. The other problem is the two best teams they get are at home. That's Cincinnati and Ohio State. Now, if you're someone who believes that they can beat those teams, then sure, it's good to have them at home. I don't think they can beat Ohio State, and they may struggle to beat Cincinnati. When you have games like that, it's better to have them on the road. That way, if you're catching an L, you're getting it on the road. So that means a team like I'd rather have Iowa and Penn State at home, who are more beatable, than have Ohio State and Cincinnati at home. And then you get Penn State and Iowa on the road. That makes it 4 tougher games as opposed to 2 tougher games, with the other 2 being home games, which you should have an advantage. So to me, when I look at Indiana, I think that's going to be their issue. Is I have a hard time seeing anything better than 8-4 on that schedule. At Iowa, at Penn State, at Michigan, at Purdue, home against Cincinnati, home against Ohio State. I have a hard time seeing them being 3-3 or better against that. I just do. And I think that's the thing that's going to keep them from making a jump. But I would like to see them prove me wrong, because I really like Tom Allen. And they got some good transfers this year. They got Stephen Carr from USC. They got some good transfers coming in. So that, maybe they'll surprise me, but I just don't see it. Andrew says the premise of the question about 2016 stems from the inefficiency of the vertical passing game in 2016. Think for Hurricane game. I haven't felt like BK is as willing to trust the passing game as much since. I don't think that's it, honestly. I mean, the Hurricane game is it's an anomaly. But if you think about it, one of the things that team actually did well that year was the vertical passing game. That was one of the only few good things that offense did, was throw the ball downfield. I mean, EQ put up really good numbers that year. I mean, they threw it downfield a ton against Syracuse. They threw it downfield against Duke. They threw it downfield against Michigan State. They threw it downfield against USC. That wasn't really, to me, the issue. The Hurricane game was a different animal. They shouldn't have been throwing the ball really at all in some of those situations. But I think the issue has been, again, 2017, they threw the ball vertically a lot in 2017. It was the biggest part of their pass offense. I think it was an Ian Book specific thing. Chief Brody says, do any former players join the message boards or watch on YouTube? The surprising answer to that is yes. I've actually learned and gotten some emails over the last year from former players said they sign up, watch the show, they read my stuff, which I was flattered and humbled by. But yeah, there are. Andrew says, I wasn't able to watch all the 2017 season due to my deployment. I was only able to see the Georgia, Miami, and Stanford vertical passing game wasn't that existent in those games. Yes, Miami and Stanford, it was not good. So yeah, there was a lot of more of that in 2017. But first of all, thank you for your service, Andrew. I appreciate that very, very much, very much. But yeah, they threw the ball downfield a lot more. You were at the end of the season after Brandon Wimbush had kind of got hurt, then lost his confidence. That was a bad time to really watch. You kind of got it at the wrong time, I guess I'd say. There were some other games where you saw it. And even against Georgia, they tried to throw the ball downfield against Georgia. They just had misses. They threw a couple deep balls to EQ. He just didn't make the catches. They threw a deep ball to Freddie Canteen that he misplayed. So they took their deep shots in that game. They just weren't effective in that game. Other games, they were a lot more effective. What I would encourage you to do, Andrew, is if you're able to, go on YouTube, watch the Michigan State game from that year. Watch the Wake Forest game from that year. Watch the NC State game from that year. Watch the USC game from that year. And in first play of the season was a deep ball to Equinemius St. Brown against Temple. So I'd encourage you to watch those games, and I think you might have a little bit of a different view about that offense. I'm going to get the last couple questions before we get out of here. Tim Vare says, as a show of togetherness, I think you should shave down to a pencil-thin mustache and rock a mullet like Brandon Clark. Do it, Coach. Tim, I'm all for togetherness. That's not happening, my man. I'm never going to have that kind of – I'm never going to have a mustache, period. Okay, my dad rocked the mustache when I was a kid. I'm not a mustache guy. I've shaved off my beard before to have a mustache just to mess with my wife. She doesn't like it. I don't like it. It's not happening. And I'm definitely never rocking a mullet. Ever rocking a mullet. I've had basically this haircut for most of my since like 16. Occasionally I'll grow it out from time to time, but I'm never rocking a mullet. I couldn't sleep with that because when my hair does get long and like it was like a couple months ago, I don't like to sleep that way. I like this haircut. It's very manageable. I like to be able to get up in the morning and not have to worry about my hair. No question. And get to the last few of these. John, hey, I appreciate you. I'm glad that you're new to the show. I enjoyed the discussion with you. You made some good points, and I'm glad that you joined up. I appreciate that very, very much. Lee Gannon, thanks again for another great show. I learned something every time. Appreciate you, Lee. Brandon, okay, Brandon coming in with the question. Okay, thought of a question. When you're ready to move on to some 2023 recruiting, can you add something to the message board where you go through Notre Dame offered prospects at each position and rank them according to preference? Yeah. So what I'll do is when I start doing some more 2023 breakdowns, Brandon, I will tag put a sticky thing at the top that's just going to be like my recruiting analysis stuff. So I'll have like the player, I'll have the like the player film evals, the player profiles. I'll put the big board rankings, all that stuff I'll have in there. So we'll do that. That's a good idea, Brandon. So we'll definitely do that. And then I'm hoping to start getting into that here as we get into the season, as the 2022 gets behind us. But, we'll have to see. But and there's a couple other things I'm trying to do for the site that if all right, so I've made a job offer to somebody that I'm hoping they take it. If they do, it's going to free me up to do a lot more of this stuff, of the analysis stuff. If they don't take it, then I have to kind of be back to the drawing board. So we'll see. But hoping it happens. So we'll see how that goes. Bob Sacamano, have a good weekend, y'all. You too, Bob. And I think that is a great way to end the show. No question about it. I got a couple of things I want to get to really quick before we go. Nicholas says, watch the 2015 game, Clemson game. Kaiser playing in his third game, and a downpour was very good. Whatever happened to Chris Brown, he had a great game. He had a great year that year. I mean, for him, he helped them beat Boston College. I mean, he was good football. He was good, solid, good rotational, complimentary player that year. No question about it. No question about it. All right, there's one here. Okay, so here we go. Tommy Gunn says, Brian, before we all leave South Bend after one of the meetup games, Sunday cookout at your place for everyone. Yeah, that's not happening. My house is not big enough to hold all of y'all. So we're gonna have to have a cookout, but we're gonna do it Saturday before one of those games. No question about it. I don't have enough room for all those people. And I think we're good. So hey, I appreciate everyone being part of the show today. I appreciate everybody sticking around. We were over 200 almost the entire last hour and a half. That's totally awesome. Great questions from everybody. Everybody have an awesome week. Before you go, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, sign up for the message boards. I saw a bunch of people signing up during the show. Appreciate that. Check out irishbreakdown.com. Sign up for the message boards. And if you're just someone who wants to watch on the YouTube channel, I appreciate that. That's okay too. But please share our videos. Please tell other people about us. Help spread the word so we can continue to try to grow this community. It has grown beyond my wildest dreams. When we first started this YouTube channel back in January, we hoped, I hope we can get monetized by August. We got monetized in February. That's because of y'all. And we've been able to really grow this channel. I remember the first time we hit 100 viewers in the show, and we were like, wow, I cannot believe that we had 100 viewers. Now when we're under 200, we're kind of a little disappointed. We had 1,000 people at one point in time in the CJ Williams stream the other day. So we appreciate y'all so much. We've enjoyed growing this thing. We're trying to get all of you to be involved in more of our channels. Obviously, we want you on the message board. We want you reading the website, all that stuff, not just the YouTube channel. That's what helps us make money. That's what helps us grow. That's what helps us even commit more to the YouTube channel, because the more I can get people to do more writing on the website, the more time I have to spend on doing more shows, better shows, different shows. So be a part of all of it. So everybody have a great rest of your Friday, great weekend. We may see you again on Sunday. Keep an eye out for that, and stay safe. And we'll talk to all of you again very, very soon.